Hello and welcome to B2B Tech Sales Summit 2022. I'm so happy you are with us here today. My name is Jacob Lovenbrand. I'm the Managing Director of Bright Vision, and I will be hosting this event here today together with my colleague.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Emma and I work as Digital Marketing Lead here at Bright Vision. And I've been spending a lot of my time the past months to make this event happen. So I'm very excited to finally be able to kick this off. And I'm very looking forward to all the great speaker presentations that we have in front of us the couple of hours to come.
We do.
We do. Sure.
So. And not only that, we have a lot of great speakers that we will present in a second. We also have a lot of great guests and people who will sign into this event pretty much from a little bit everywhere. So, yeah. What do you say, Emma? Wouldn't it be fun to hear a little bit where everybody is from?
Definitely. It would be exciting to see how we're spreading out in the world, where everyone is from. So you can just type it in the chat that you have on the right hand side of your screen so we can see where are you guys from. Let's see if we can get some chat action going. Sydney, Croatia. Wow, London, Philippines, Germany. We have Spain. So we're covering a lot of Europe, it seems like. That's fun. And Australia as well, and Philippines. So a bit of everywhere in the world. That's really great to see.
Wow. Yeah, to a large extent, a global event. So fantastic. Awesome. So yeah, let's use the chat today so we can interact with each other and use it for questions and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so a little bit about today's event. We have a lot of events here at Bright Vision. We have at least 3-4 major virtual events every year. This is the first time we do the B2B Tech Sales Summit. And so we're extremely excited to have that. And today when we started discussing what kind of topics we should bring up on this event, we just felt that there's so much going on in technology companies who want to develop their sales processes, their sales tech stacks, the best practices, and so forth. There's a lot of trends, not a lot of new tech coming. There's a lot of experiences from successful companies that have done this really, really well we can learn from. And to be a sales and revenue driving leader in today in a B2B tech company, there's a lot of things to keep in mind and watch out and study up on and so forth. So our hope is that you will pick up some ideas, some learnings, some best practices, some insights that will help you to become a little bit better tomorrow, have maybe a few more initiatives in your back sleeve and so forth. And hopefully everything can be to your benefit. That's our aim and goal for the day. And we have such a great speaker lineup, so I'm sure we will have a lot of this going. So if we just have a quick look at the lineup and the program, you can see that we have 6 sessions. And you can find the detailed information about each in the handout section. And I could go through all of them here and present them, but we will let a few of them actually present themselves with a short introduction video here. So Emma, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Hughes, author of Tech Powered Sales, and I am so excited about being the opening keynote for the Tech Sales Conference. We'll be talking about how do we elevate engagement and drive improved sales results in this new economy that we're all operating in. I'll see everybody at the conference.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan J. Ingram, 3-time LinkedIn top sales voice, and also I have been a trainer for top of the funnel for Slack, Zoom, and Snowflake, brands you've heard of. However, today we're going to be talking about something that is an exciting development within our space, which is B2B influencer marketing and how you can drive more sales doing this by helping your team do it, surprising, and also getting other external influencers to drive your pipeline. So I'm excited to see you all there. Come prepared for your questions. for the B2B Tech Sales Summit.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm the managing director of Bright Vision, and I'm going to talk today about how to ramp up yourself with a growth team structure. That's a very interesting organization and outsourcing, insourcing model we are using together with several clients that have scaled companies' sales in European market significantly if you're a SaaS or tech company. So I'm going to give you a few insights around our experiences and setups around this topic. So see you there.
Hi, my name is Roy Artuv and I'm from Winning by Design. I want to invite you to my keynote at the B2B Tech Sales Summit, in which I'm going to talk about the scientific principles that govern recurring revenues and the actions you can take tomorrow in order to adopt a more sustainable growth strategy for your business. See you there.
Awesome. So as you can hear and see, we will have a lot of interesting topics here today by really thought-leading experts talking about their topics. Okay, so who's the company behind this? We are a company called... Oh, sorry, Emma. I jumped ahead. Maybe you should take this.
At all. We will hear more from our speakers soon, but I just want to mention first that for today's event, we'll be having a little Q&A and engagement competition. So the top 3 most active participants will be rewarded towards the end of the event. And the prize that you can win today and choose between are either a Bright Vision thermos or a typically Swedish candle holder, which you can see Jacob holding up there nicely on the screen. Exactly. So those are the prizes. So make sure to drop your questions for the speakers at any time during the sessions, and then we'll try to cover as many as possible of them during the session towards the end of each speaking slot.
Okay. Now, so Bright Vision, just in 30 seconds here. We're hosting this event because we're an agency working with B2B tech companies, helping them drive revenue and deliver growth. And we help a lot of tech companies take their technology, products, and innovations and try to introduce them to new markets and cross-sell, upsell on existing clients, as well as finding totally new ones. That's what we do, and that's what kind of business we're into. And I typically talk about that we are technology optimists here at Bright Vision because we think that technology has the power to improve billions of lives. We've seen that numerous times. Of course, technology can be used for the bad and evil purposes as well, but it can certainly be used and is mostly done in solving the big problems we have, like energy crisis, the pollution, the environmental problems we're struggling with today in our Earth. And I can see that technology and innovative tech companies will be at the forefront of solving those problems for us. So that's why we're so optimistic. And we try to be a growth marketing agency that really can help accelerate the spread of innovation and try to bring new technology to suppliers and buyers and combining them together. So that's a little bit what we do here at Bright Vision. And we work with many different clients. We work with 150 to 200 clients each year. And here's a small sample of companies we do typically work with. And we offer services in the whole funnel, like top of the funnel, digital, inbound, outbound, and so forth. And that's what we do. And today we have put together a small B2B tech sales deep dive for those of you who are interested in getting a second opinion and an expert opinion about your sales process and so forth. You can book that for free. It's an expert talk, so hopefully you will get a few insights and learning and can tweak your sales process based on that. So that's an offering you can you hopefully can sign up for. Okay, that's it. It's time to kick off. And as you heard, we have our first speaker lined up, and it's actually the first speaker we ever have had at an event calling in from Australia. So it's really, really exciting to have you with us, Tony. And just a very short introduction to Tony. I'm sure a lot of you already know Tony since you have written many books, of which I love your latest one, who's so interesting. Every sales leader needs to read that one, I think. But you have been for 30 years CEO and working in sales leadership, and you're ranked as one of the most influential persons in professional selling within Asia Pacific, but by Top Sales Magazine. So that's great. And you will share how you can transform your message and elevate engagement, and give us a little bit of insights and content around that area. So with that very, very short introduction, I'm so happy to have you with us, Tony.
Jacob, thank you so much for inviting me to be at the B2B Tech Sales Summit. I thought it was really apt that I attended on the back of publishing the book Tech Powered Sales recently. It was published by HarperCollins Leadership out of New York, and also the American Management Association. So we're living in really interesting times. If you have a think about what's really going on in the world, we've had the pandemic for a few years, and that really was a catalyst for this thing we call the fourth industrial revolution. It's really been the impetus for a digital first world. And everyone had to adapt in the way that they sell, especially tech, in a remote selling world. But digital engagement really quickly became digital disengagement. What I saw in the world is sellers really struggling. And I work with some of the biggest tech brands globally, companies like Adobe, Salesforce, DocuSign, SAP, Qualtrics, IBM, Red Hat. These are all my clients that I've been working with for a long time, and especially helping them solve the number one problem that everybody says they have today, which is not enough consistent opportunity pipeline. So if we look at what's going on and the decision-making process inside our customer organizations, it's tough for them. They're facing inflation, cost increases, supply chain disruption. Obviously in Europe, there's the war that's going on. There's just all of these problems. Energy costs are spiraling. There's increasingly more uncertainty in the world, which is creating, in essence, decision paralysis for a lot of organizations. So in the session today, we're going to talk about three key things in the next 20 minutes. We're going to talk about how do we adopt the mindset and then a strategy to execute successfully, a concept of let's make the very excuse we're hearing from our customer the reality. If we think about tech sales, we know that our clients have no chance of successfully digitally transforming without embracing technology. We live at an inflection point in history, which is really unique. This point in time where you can concurrently drive cost down and at the same time drive revenue, loyalty, and productivity up. And the thing we know for organizations is that the experiences that they create are really the margins that they make. And we today can give people a much better experience with technology augmented with humans than through traditional methods. And everything that's gone on in the last few years has really driven this. Now, you might find this slide funny. A lot of people laugh when they see this slide and they go, this is so true. Often inside the customer organization, they think that because they have a budget, they have the approval to spend it. And often one of the big problems in selling is a salesperson will qualify whether the person has a budget. And often they never have enough budget is the reality. We need to, instead of thinking about budget, think about business case. How do we help the customer co-create the business case that provides the necessary level of funding and support for them to be successful? So when they think about budget, it's really interesting. An organization like Exxon, a big energy company, inside their own organization, 85% of business cases are rejected. Only 15% are approved. And of the 15% that are approved, only half of those ever get their money. So that's about 7% of the business cases that go up actually secure approval. In my part of the world, here in Australia, there's a tier one telco a tier one telecommunications company called Optus. In their organization, 80% of business cases are rejected. So it's incredible. Just because someone has a budget doesn't mean they have the authority to spend it. Often sellers are what I describe, they're just good enough to fail, not good enough to succeed. And what I mean by that is if we're good enough to generate some interest where they agree to have a conversation, they'd even maybe like a demo. If you think about tech sales, they'd like a demo. And then what often happens is the deal goes deathly quiet. And that's obviously really bad. We need to be good enough to generate positive intent, commitment to change, not just interest in what it is that we offer. And the reason that that is so important is because all deals lead to the boardroom. All paths lead to the boardroom. And often inside the boardroom or that executive decision layer, there's a lot of pushback. And our champion, coach, supporter, sponsor of our deal, if we're trying to sell tech into an organization, as they seek approval, they'll hear things like what you can see on the screen. Hey, there's a lot of fatigue in the organization. We can't do everything. Why this particular initiative now? I've got 17 other things I'm being asked to approve. Why this now? I'm going to circle back to how we can deal with that risk that we face in our own deals. So we'll circle back and we'll actually talk about this. Just as I'm sharing these concepts and I go through these three key things, feel free to type your questions into chat. I can see chat and I'll answer them. So let's talk about the first key concept today, the first idea. Make the excuse the reason. Make the excuse the reason. And I'm going to share with you a true story. Before COVID hit 2.5 years ago, my biggest client globally was not a tech company, although tech is a key part of their value proposition to their customers. But it's a travel management company. They manage the travel programs for big corporates. And Flight Centre Travel Group is a publicly listed company. They operate globally, and they operate in London and Europe, Africa, all of Asia Pacific, North America. And they have these big brands. FCM Travel is their enterprise brand. Corporate Travelers, their mid-tier corporate brand. And they called me when COVID hit and they said, hey, Tony, whether it's our account managers calling an existing client or whether it's a new business account executive, an AE, trying to win a new logo account, we're hearing universally the same pushback. And it goes something like this. Look, I don't even know why you're phoning me. None of my staff are traveling. Ring me back when the airlines are in the air again. Now, I don't know what you think about that, but if you sold travel management services, you could run the travel program for a corporate. That's a brutal, brutal objection. So let's think about this concept of let's make the excuse the reason. I said to the leadership team, let's think about the reason that the person does not want to meet. The reason is none of my staff are traveling. Doesn't make sense to talk. Let's make that the reason. So this is what we came up with. We would phone the chief financial officer of the customer and say, hey, Mary, with none of your staff traveling right now, do you know what? I think there's an opportunity for you as CFO to drive somewhere between 8 and 12% of cost out of what will return to be the third to fifth biggest expense line item on your P&L. And Mary, do you know what? With none of your staff traveling, you don't have any change management issues and you have the bandwidth in your admin team. And if we do this well, you'll also not just drive cost out, but you'll reduce duty of care risk and you drive up productivity and retention of your most valuable people in the business. Do you mind if I ask, when's the last time that you reviewed your travel policy and the way that you've been running travel as a process? Now, I don't know what you think of that, but the results that they've achieved in the last 2 years is they have won hundreds and hundreds of competitor accounts over to them while their competitor was in the fetal position, waiting out this economic problem. The pandemic was really an economic problem if you sell travel management, not just a health issue. While their competitors were pulling back, they stepped up and they've grown their business. Huge success. So think about this first concept. Make the excuse the reason. We now live in a digital first world. The fourth industrial revolution is a real thing. Technology is the key. Technology and automation is the key to driving cost out and productivity and margin and profit and loyalty up. So if you're in tech sales, really think about that. Let's go to the second idea. The second idea is, as we seek to engage, we need to talk the language of leaders. It's really critical. Do you know disingenuous rapport building approaches don't work today? And here's the other thing. If you sell tech, and this is a tech sales conference, if you sell tech, the people that you're trying to get to are typically not looking to add more tech to the stack. They're not wanting another vendor that they have to deal with. Do you know, for the CIO, the CFO, the CEO, all of these key roles, they're often thinking, how do we consolidate the stack? How do we reduce the number of vendors that we're dealing with? Let's make integration the vendor's problem by moving away from best of breed specialists. So really think about this, and we need to talk the language of leaders. Most sellers create their own objections, their own problems by talking about what they do. We'll come to that in point number 3. So we need a point of view for how they can drive improved results in their role. We got a great question here from Ronja. How often do you believe one should reevaluate the current sales messaging strategy to ensure a great level of engagement? All the time. You need to be reviewing your messaging all the time. While ever we sound like somebody else, our messaging won't work. Most people are loading bad messaging that's perceived as spam by the customer into their Gatling gun of automation, into these sales engagement platforms. I talk a lot about this in the Tech Powered Sales book. So you need to review your messaging and make sure that it's relevant to the industry vertical and the buyer personas. We need to move away from generic messaging. How does this help the person in their role drive improved results? So thank you for the question, Ronja. So when we think about talking the language of leaders, the real decision makers look at everything through this kind of lens. Beyond the mythical, exaggerated return on investment claims from the vendor, they're thinking, what cost savings can we really bank on? Do these alleged productivity gains really monetize? What's the bottom line impact? Either top line revenue impact or bottom line profit impact? How quickly does this pay for itself? What risk is involved in change, in doing this, in implementing it and making sure it's adopted and delivers? Can we maybe delay this? This is what's happening with the people above the level that we typically sell to. And we need to equip the person that we sell to be able to do this well. So when you think about the language of leaders, leaders think about driving positive results and managing risk. What's the euro or the dollar or the pound or whatever your currency is impact? What's the percentage improvement? What is the business case? And strategic selling by definition means engage early and co-create the business case and shape the agenda and create a positive bias in their requirements toward us. If we're the one that is able to do those things and help them secure consensus, identify and manage their risks, we become the emotional favorite. This is how we succeed. So just as we're all at the run up to the holiday season, we're in the run up to Christmas. Obviously, it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere. For me, down here in Australia, we're coming into our summer vacation period, and there's a lot of deal risk as we come into a holiday period. Less so in North America and Europe, but very much so in the Southern Hemisphere, because it's not just a festival period, it's also a big summer vacation period. And the 4 reasons that deals typically slip, stall, and die, the first one is a lack of compelling commercial value in the people that sign it off. The next thing is there's an absence of consensus or trust. Not everybody is on board. And then maybe we're not aligned in process and timing. Are you building a mutual plan as a sales professional to de-risk the close on your deal and making sure those mutual plans go all of the way through to successful implementation, not just our purchase order? And then the 4th reason that a deal can slip, stall, and die is some kind of negative surprise. Time risk. Our key supporter leaves, they get acquired, they post bad results, a pandemic hits, Europe goes into recession, something even worse happens with the war or energy supplies. So So just think about, these are the reasons that deals stall, and the way we open determines whether we're ever going to get to close. Opening really is the new closing. And I'm going to share with you in a moment how we can open deals and transform the way that we engage. It's the biggest takeaway for today. This is how you de-risk closing your deal. When you're working with the person that's your sponsor, your champion, your coach in the deal, you need to ask them, when you take this up the line for approval internally and you hear some kind of pushback, how are you going to finish these 2 sentences? This is essential because it pays for itself by. If the person we're selling to doesn't have a compelling answer, our deal's in trouble. Just because it makes their life easier, just because it helps them with their KPIs, it gives them a little bit of time back, makes things, automation, streamlines things, that's not a business benefit. How does this impact revenue, profit, bottom line results? So in every deal, if you're forecasting to your own boss, you need to be able to articulate the compelling commercial value for getting this done. Let's finish up on the third idea for today. So the first idea was make the excuse the reason. The next thing is talk the language of leaders. And the third thing is create impact in your message. We need to nail our conversation narrative. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Every time we spring from the bushes and surprise somebody with a new conversation, they have not met us yet, the attention clock starts ticking down. And the attention clock, the best it gets for us is 7 seconds before they stop listening. Just 7 seconds before they stop listening. So here's the framework to grab someone's attention. I want you to think about this concept of flip it. Flip the order of the conversation. Most sellers start at the bottom. They talk about their capabilities. Let's imagine that I worked for Salesforce. They're one of the world's leading tech companies. So I said, hi, Mike, it's Tony from Salesforce. We're the global market leader in CRM and customer experience software. The moment we say that, what we do is create an objection. We're not looking to re-platform our CRM at the moment. Send me an email. We're not looking to change right now. I've worked with Salesforce previously. It's not something we're looking at doing. All we do is create an objection, or if we've been brave enough to elevate the conversation, we get pushed down to people who evaluate tech. So instead of opening that way, let's go top down. Let's lead with a point of view on how this person in their role can drive improved results that matter not just to them, but to the company. And then when they say, well, how do you think I'd do that? We say, well, it's around a strategy of it. It's around you being able to, rather than talking about our product. And if we do this well, they'll be hooked. Their interest will be hooked in how they can improve the results in their role in a way that makes them a hero in their organization. And then the strategy will make sense. Now, let's imagine as a tech seller, you're selling marketing automation software. I'm sure some of the people on this in this seminar today, in this summit, do sell marketing automation software. So if I was talking to a chief marketing officer, I would say something like, hey, Mary, the reason for the call is I think there could be a way for you to reduce acquisition costs and at the same time improve average order size. Let's imagine they're a CMO, a marketing manager for an online retail business. And if Mary says, well, how do you think I could do that? We say, well, it's around more precise, pardon me, it's around more precise targeting where there's stronger buying intent and with stronger personalization to create more effective engagement. That's how we're seeing other retailers reduce the cost of acquisition by up to 20% and improving average order sizes by around 15%. Do you mind if I ask, what's your strategy to drive down acquisition costs right now? And then if she says, well, how would you help us improve targeting and personalization? And again, if I was maybe somewhere like Salesforce, I would say, well, it's all about having a complete view of the customer and be able to unlock data insights that enable you to execute that as a strategy. Identify where the strongest buying intent is and what the best attributes are for personalization. So that's an example of how you can transform messaging. Now, just before we go to Q&A, I just want to finish with an example. I talked today about when we successfully sell to our buyer persona. Imagine you were selling CRM software. Imagine you are maybe HubSpot, you're selling CRM and marketing automation, and you've succeeded with the chief marketing officer and the chief sales officer, and now they go off to their boss, the CEO, for approval. Now, this is a true story. I was once the sales director for a public corporation, Objective Corporation, and the CEO of the business had approved us going to market to buy a CRM. And what I didn't know when I joined the company was that my two predecessors in this role of head of sales globally, they'd both gone to market to buy a CRM at his instruction, but on both occasions for them, he never approved it. And instead of approving it, he ended up firing them, which was what led to me joining the company. So now I joined the business. He says, look, we need a new CRM. Go to market. You've got a budget. I accept that we need to do it. And then I'm in there trying to secure approval in my Monday morning regular meeting with him. And week after week, I was getting rejected. The request was being knocked back. It was being rejected. And in the end, I realized, hey, Tony, you're meant to be good at selling. You need to drink some of your own champagne here and think about this, right? You need to sell him on this. So in one of the meetings, I said to him, this is essential in you reinstilling confidence in you and the company at board level around the forecast. And it's how you hold me and the organization to account for delivering on the growth that you've committed to the board. And this is going to pay for itself with higher deal win rates. Sign it off. And he did. So the three key things today, as you go to market, we've got economic headwinds in this new economy for 2023. Every decision within the customer organization is going to be scrutinized. So we need to make sure we talk the language of leaders. We have an effective narrative for opening that also carries all of the way through to closing around the compelling commercial value for change. So I'd encourage you to read Tech Powered Sales. Feel free to connect with me inside LinkedIn. And my personal website, tonyhughes.com.au, has got lots of free content. And we've got e-learning around these concepts at salesiqglobal.com. So let's go ahead and jump into some questions. So Lorraine, I can see your question here. Do you generally believe that the process of elevating engagement by transforming the messaging should be following a slow adjustment, or is it possible to implement it rapidly but efficiently? You can implement it rapidly but efficiently. I was working with a tier one tech company earlier this week. It's Thursday at the moment. This was Monday. I ran a 4-hour session on creating pipeline and transforming the narrative. Their manager emailed me yesterday and said in the 24 hours following it, the team just in Sydney, just the Sydney office, generated more than $1 million of new pipeline. So what we did is we moved away from talking about us and what we do. Instead of that, we had a point of view on how we think that buyer persona we're engaging with can drive improved results in their role. It's a different mindset. If we exercise the muscle and we do it naturally, we'll absolutely be successful. Hey, Emma, did you want me to go to the other question with Stephanie? Have we got time for that?
Yes, I think we have 1 more minute or so to do the last question. So Stephanie is wondering here about CRM systems. When using trigger events in a CRM system to further contextualize engagement, do you have some big do's and don'ts when it comes to this in order to, maximize the engagement? I guess that's a fairly big question to answer in a short amount of time, but...
Okay, so I know we're coming up on time, so I'll make sure I don't go any longer than 90 seconds. So trigger events create awareness of need or opportunity in the mind of the buyer, and they create context for our outreach. A trigger event is something that happens against an attribute within our ideal customer profile. Often it's around a buyer persona role, a new person into a role. If we decide we target tech companies that are growing, we go, well, a trigger event could be a capital raise. So you would use the capital raise as the reason for why you're calling as context. But the comment I'll make is this. Most people know they need to add personalization, and they do a god-awful, terrible job of injecting personalization, and it just doesn't work. Hey, Tony, I noticed that you're Sales Innovation Director at Sales IQ Global. That is rubbish personalization. Last week, I received 87 in-mails in my LinkedIn inbox congratulating me on my work anniversary, and 2/3 of them tagged it with a pitch. That's rubbish personalization that damages you. So personalization is the most difficult thing to get right. So Emma, thank you so much. Jacob, I know we're up for time. It's important to keep things rolling and keep it on time. So thanks for having me, everybody. And Jacob, I'll hand back to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. That was great and awesome insights you shared with us. So we're so happy with that. And yeah, thank you, Tony. And thank you for staying up so late. It's in the middle of the night in Sydney. Okay, we're moving on in our agenda. And now we have our next speaker, who is Peter O'Neill.
Hey, it works.
Hi, Peter. Welcome. We're so happy to have you with us. And, we're really looking forward to your content. But as we have written on the introduction slide, you have been a long time with Forrester Research, but now you're working as Research in Action in Germany. And really excited to hear more about your content about the new era of B2B sales engagement and your insights around that area.
Okay, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. And this is a very international conference. The host is up there in Sweden, as you've heard, previous speaker in Australia. And I'm a Brit. I hope you can still hear that. I still have the accent, but I live here in the south of Germany, near Stuttgart. I've lived here over 40 years because way back 1981, HP attracted me to move here and to work in marketing. And I stayed with HP in technology marketing for around 20 years, including 3 years in corporate marketing in California. But after that, I moved to the other side of the tech industry, I would say. And I joined Meta Group as a technology analyst, was there for a while, then worked at Gartner. And then I'm probably most known now, and as you just heard, for my 12 years at Forrester Research, where I was industry analyst around the topic of marketing and research director as well for 5 years. And during that time, as research director, I actually founded a new research group to focus on sales enablement. And we actually had a bigger group then 2 years later, which was entitled B2B marketing, which included sales enablement. And probably I'm maybe infamous during that time in 2015 for being co-author of a pretty seminal Forrester report that was entitled very aggressively, Death of the B2B Salesman, where we put together a forecast based on the emergence of e-commerce and the rising importance of e-commerce in B2B as well, and thought about what would that mean to the sales force and to the role of the salesperson in a B2B organization. Very controversial, heavily discussed, and I enjoyed very much producing that report and putting that out. So in the last few years, I'm now independent. I work as an independent analyst. I try to advise companies around their vendor selection processes, or more specifically about how to understand the vendor landscapes when they're trying to automate a certain process in their marketing organization. And to that end, I work with the B2B marketing organization in London, and I'm their lead analyst and do research reports for them through the year. But I also work with the Research in Action organization, which is headquartered here in Germany, but we work globally. And we focus very much on vendor landscapes and vendor selection processes. So as you can see here, quite an expansive organization. We built up a panel, a global panel. My source is the 90,000 marketing automation panel. And then we do about 10 surveys a year on various marketing automation topics, and interview and survey that panel. In total for each survey, it's 1,500 candidates. And we provide and collect lots of interesting information, I hope, around technology, the state of that technology, and more importantly, how the market perceives the various vendors that are around for that technology, for that technology solution. For me as an analyst, the most pleasing statistic is somewhere up the top right. Thousands of readers of our report, because we made 95% of the report available on our public website, researchandaction.de, and we get thousands of readerships. And to be honest, I remember in my Forrester days that we were happy as a research director if we had a couple of hundred readers of a specific report, because obviously it's behind a paywall. It was only available to the Forrester clients who had their subscription licenses through that time. So, as I said, doing various surveys through the year, and one I did recently about 3 months ago was focused on the topic of sales engagement management. Now, when we talk to the panel, we firstly qualify whether that the person we're talking to is engaged enough with the topic that we want to survey, that they can help us with answering questions and their ideas of the vendors in that landscape. So we firstly present them with a definition of what we're researching about, what we're surveying about. And this is the definition that we showed for sales engagement management. And as you can see, it describes what's going on there. Now, some people might call this sales enablement, but that's really a term that's been locked in as a sort of sales content management process. And I wanted to hear much more than just that aspect. And to be honest, sales enablement and sales engagement management has transformed dramatically, especially the last couple of years, maybe even since the 2015 report that I mentioned. In this year now, buyer behavior has evolved to become primarily digital. So traditional in-person selling is really no longer the norm in most companies. According to McKinsey, 70% of business decision makers are now open to fully self-service or remote purchases, even in excess of $50,000. And in fact, just over a quarter would spend more than $500,000 in an e-commerce transaction, as a self-service transaction. So this increasing impact of digital marketing and digital selling, e-commerce, means that automated sales strategies are now, and analytics are now joining that traditional sales engagement management process family. And already in many companies, the sales organization includes a new generation of customer success managers with different informational needs to the traditional salesperson. The process is further expanding to cater for many other customer-facing employees who are outside of sales, customer-facing at least digitally. Customer loyalty is increasingly brittle now if needs are not met, because McKinsey also reported in their report that 8 in 10 B2B decision makers say they will actively look for a new supplier if performance guarantees are not offered as part of the deal, i.e., for example, a full refund if certain level of performance is not met. So the customer interaction needs to extend throughout the company, and it's definitely no longer dominated by sales. In fact, some analysts and even vendors are now starting to propose a different term, a much broader descriptor perhaps, of revenue enablement or revenue management, where revenue becomes the aggregation of sales and retention rate. But we'll see as we progress. So the first question that we asked the survey respondents was around what's going on in their world. What do they expect? Do you expect changes in your sales channel mix in the next years due to e-commerce, customer preferences, competitive pressures, and so on? We listed several areas of change, and we asked them to mark it as very true, somewhat true, or not true for their company. So as you can see, the top change is the rise of e-commerce, with an 83% very true response. That's a change that dramatically alters the dependency on a field sales force. It's also indicated in the same manner by the other change items listed. And once again, that's a change that I predicted back in 2015 with that Forrester report. But wow, it's now been accelerated and brought to the front in most every company through the COVID crisis. The inside sales, sort of business development function, is now growing in most companies, but it requires more and probably different sales enablement functions than was the case with traditional field selling. So there's things going on and things changing quite dramatically already, and this is how the market is perceiving, how users are perceiving the changes in their environment. And then we asked about the most important processes they are now focusing on in their new sales engagement management projects. These are the new processes they want to work on and improve through automation. And you can see the highest new interest is improving guided selling and pipeline management. And then video selling, i.e. using video, using the media that we're working in today to do their selling, as opposed to physically visiting the site, physically sitting at a desk or in a conference room with potential buyers. And these are new things, and they weren't maybe the functions that people were buying 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. I have a case in point that I've been working with a very large bank. The project probably started maybe 3 years ago when they were going through a vendor selection process for sales enablement, as they called it. I helped them to reduce that their list to a short list and help them to do the interviews. But then COVID came by, the project got suspended for a while, and lo and behold, I was there last week in London talking to them, and they're redefining their needs for the project, because the type of solution that they now need in a new selling environment with new users or new salespeople being supported has changed dramatically. So things have changed. And as you can see, these are the processes that people are now focusing on. Just for completeness, on this slide, you can see the list of processes that we showed, and these are the ones that are already automated, adequately automated in most companies: calendaring, sales enablement, classical sales enablement, onboarding, training, and so on. Now, by the way, there was an interesting rider to the question as well. We also asked them to select, if they wanted to, any processes they thought that they didn't need. Select as not needed. And I'll just point out, you don't see it on the slide, that over 80%, 80, of the respondents stated that these 3 processes were not needed in their company. Immersive experience, the fact that you put on goggles and maybe a virtual reality type modeling, workflow management, and sales gamification, a very hot topic 4 or 5 years ago, giving out prizes and showing league tables for different elements of the sales process, sales gamification. Now over 80% of respondents saying they don't really need that, not really that relevant to us, thank you very much. So another question that we asked is around the drivers. I mean, what are the anticipated benefits that these buyers are expecting to drive their investment in sales engagement management automation? They could actually select 3. We gave them a long list of benefits to choose from. And overall, nearly half of the companies are focused on that sales content management, probably, which is the functionality number 1 that people are expecting. But already now, integrating to other marketing asset systems has become important, because a lot of the content is being shown digitally as opposed to the sales rep handing it over. And the aspect of personalization, contextualization is becoming important. And of course, you need to have other marketing asset systems, digital experience systems linked in to that type of functionality and that type of process automation. Around 1/4 value the opportunity also to support social sharing. I hope in a different way than we just heard from the previous speaker, not using LinkedIn in a sort of mass mailing methodology, but maybe using LinkedIn or other social platforms in a more informed manner, in a more useful manner for both sides. Interestingly enough, the priorities you see here, the benefits and the drivers that the respondents were naming, they varied widely across the regions. Our survey is a global survey, 1,500 businesses around the world. It's split usually 40% North America, 40% Europe, and 20% in Asia Pac. And so we do, in our report, show a regional comparison as well of the survey. And we show here those numbers directly out of the report. I know this slide is very busy and it needs more time than I will give you here to digest it. It gives me the chance to say that if you wanted to have a copy of this report, feel free, when I show my email address at the end, to drop me a message asking for that. I'll be giving you maybe a hint about how to do that when I come to the end of this presentation. But overall, social selling seems to be more important in Europe. Content control is more considered in Europe as is ensuring adoption. But the benefits of improving revenue operations is recognized by 4 times as many European executives compared to North America. But interestingly enough, there's more data that I'm sure you can deep dive into. Talking about deep dive, to back up the survey of these 1,500, I do around a dozen deep dive interviews with some of the survey respondents. And of course, during the research process, I also end up spending a lot of time talking to the vendors who are named in the survey. I'll come on to that in a moment. So that gives me a lot of background information that enables me and empowers me maybe to write down some, what I see as the top sales, engagement, management, market trends that I observe and I have observed over the time. And I put together 2 slides to describe those observations. This one is around the market. The next slide would be something more focused about what vendors should be thinking about and worrying about. So the customer experience. Now, there's a clear drive in most sectors to optimize the customer experience. Nowadays, that's very much the digital experience. And the customer experience, including the digital experience, very much includes the buying phase, whether planning a complex purchase, as you've heard from McKinsey, even over $500,000, or just routinely ordering replacement supplies. So the introduction of these tools that we're talking about here can definitely transform, improve, and enhance the buying process, the buying experience. We've talked about COVID. We've talked about our anticipation, even at 2015, about e-commerce and what it means to B2B interactions. And both buyers and sellers have now learned to rely on digital platforms to share content and to communicate. Now, for security and compliance reasons, it's imperative that there's a company-wide sales engagement platform is used across the company. That's much preferable to each seller doing their own thing, using their own concept, their own platform. And so we're hearing more and more the concept of a digital sales room in companies where information is shared, and that's becoming quite well established as a concept. Now, many of the projects that I see around sales engagement management are actually consolidation projects. There are bits and bits of technology all over the field offices, in the inside sales organization, and so on. And these projects are now focusing on rationalizing the current myriad of centrally installed and self-loaded applications that are found on a seller's device. And so providing one platform of robust tools for the sellers to use in their engagement with, of course, increasingly informed buyers. And the idea is to support sellers in their internal collaboration, as well as optimizing and supporting them for all their communications with external parties. Now, in the last few years, we've seen the range and the importance of analytics and guidance become even more mission critical in this whole scenario. A bad customer experience is when sellers call on the wrong contacts at a bad time with unhelpful information. Companies will not only expect the new sales engagement management systems to avoid that scenario, but they also prefer solutions that proactively generate an optimal experience for both parties, buyer and seller. Modern systems should now prompt sellers that their account is in market. They have a budget, they're looking for something in a timely manner, and provide recommendations, content, what to say, what to show, and coaching, how to bring across the point of view, how to bring across the idea and the offering. So as I said, the other slide is about trends that I've observed around the vendors. And I've known most of the vendors that are around in sales enablement for a long time because of my work at Forrester and because of the work I do now. So I do try to sort of put together some advice for the vendors themselves, because that will I hope, make the interactions between vendors and buyers much better. The thing is, when a buyer is involved in putting together this project, this is something that they consider maybe once every 10 years, maybe only once in their career. Sales engagement management, what do I need? What are the technologies available? Who are the leading providers? What am I looking for? How should I compare them? And so they really are in a very weak position, if anything, vis-a-vis the vendors who, of course, who are doing this every day. I mean, it's their bread and butter. This is their business, especially the salespeople. And so, I mean, very much my role is to help the buyers and advise the buyers about the current state of this marketplace and this vendor landscape. My advice to the vendors is they really need to focus on user experience. Make sure their products, their solution is really helping users, sellers, customer success people, and so on, people using their system. Because the greatest barrier still for success for these projects is adoption. And successful solution vendors need to focus on providing the optimal relationship management experience through better integrations, a very empathetic user interface, adaptability, and of course, device flexibility. You never really know what devices the users are deploying these days to work on those products. I probably said now a few times that it's not just salespeople that we're now working with. It's a whole group of different users that are now being involved with these products. So engagement with customers has really extended to new roles such as customer success, pre-sales consulting, post-sales service, hey, even marketing. Their needs are similar to those in sales, but they're toned and weighted quite differently. And so the vendors must learn this new language to be able to communicate effectively. Putting these projects into practice is really around change management. Marketing and sales professionals are very sensitive to new IT systems. Most companies have been hurt by adopting their CRM system probably too quickly and too rapidly in the last years. Sales engagement management is probably going to be disrupting established working practices in field organizations, in sales organization. It's often perceived by salespeople as a time and motion reporting system. So there'll be resistance. So there needs to be some quite experienced implementation consulting going on, and change management is a very important part of the project. Integration is something we've heard about before, but I've stressed it a few times as well. It's not necessarily the strength of many vendors to be able to integrate, but most of the vendors are now actually running a great list of becoming a very niche technology within a very larger topic that most organizations are now considering, revenue tech. So as part of an overall trend towards maybe adopting more capable revenue management technology, these vendors are going to be challenged by solutions around account-based marketing or solutions around even customer data management, because many of those vendors already have just enough sales enablement capabilities, and that may be enough to look out a more pure play sales enablement vendor. So there's something for the vendors to worry about, and some of them are doing it. They're talking to me about that point right as we speak. So when we do these interviews, the last part of the interview is basically we ask the respondents, the worldwide respondents, remember 1,500, do they know of one, maybe even two vendors in this context that they could give us feedback about? So they name to us spontaneously vendors that they know about, and we ask them several questions of the vendors, how they rate their product, how they rate their customer service, how they rate their price value ratio, and so on. And those scores basically then help us then to put together a table of the vendors. At the end of the day, the 15 vendors with the best scores that are named in the survey get into this list here that you see. And then I approach the vendors and I ask for a briefing. I talk to the vendors in more detail because I, as an analyst, also get the opportunity to score the vendors as well. So here are the 15 vendors that earned their place in the top. So these are the top 15 out of a much longer list of vendors, of course, that are out there offering sales engagement management software, as you can see. And then we put together a process of sales engagement vendors evaluation criteria. We have these evaluation here. We have weightings. Some of the scores are purely scored by the respondents in the survey, such as the product breadth and depth. I don't touch that as an analyst. The recommendation index, would you recommend this vendor to one of your peers? That's either yes or no, and that's purely from the research survey. Also, customer service and the price value ratio. And I am more involved in the innovation, market share, and obviously the go-to-market strategy. But at the end of the day, a combination of the scoring from the survey and the scoring from myself puts together a matrix where we have the y-axis is the strategy scores, and the x-axis are the execution scores. And lo and behold, by scoring each vendor individually, we're able to put together what we call a matrix, a vendor selection matrix, based on those scores. And here's the list that came out of the research we did for sales engagement management, and those vendors. I showed you the overall list, and here they are separated into the market leaders. Those are all the vendors that are in the top right quadrant. The strategy leader, you can probably guess who that is and where that is. And the three vendors that are down in the bottom, the four vendors that are down in the bottom left quadrant as challengers. And that's based on scores given by the marketplace. This is the market perception of those vendors. This is different, I think, than a Magic Quadrant or a Forrester Wave, because those reports are based on what the analyst thinks and how the analyst scores really primarily the product, not the vendor. In the marketplace, when buyers are thinking about who to work with, for them it's 80% the vendor and 20% the product. And so we've balanced our review and our scoring schema much differently, much more orientated towards how people really want to see the vendors and want to compare the vendors. So I'll make you an offer now based on this table here. This is the public version that we put on the researchinaction.de website. Let me go to the final slide and show you my email address. Those of you that would like a copy of the full report, please send me an email and give me your guess of who you think is the overall #1 global leader in this survey. And I'll send you back the full report that actually names the global leader, because lo and behold, that vendor licensed a reprint of the report. So there is a full version available with their name and their profile in the report, and I'll send you that back as a reward. But I'm interested to see what most of you see, or who most of you see as the global leader from your point of view. It's like another survey in itself. So thanks a lot. I hope that was useful information to you, and handing back to Emma.
Yes, thank you so much, Peter. Very interesting presentation. And it looks like we have some questions for you from the audience. I thought we could dive into them right away. We have one here from Lucas. He's asking if there's anything from the report that surprised you more than other outcomes from the report.
I was surprised by the degree of importance of e-commerce. I thought B2B was maybe moving a little bit slower towards e-commerce, especially in the larger enterprises and the larger sales. But it was a much bigger number than I expected. But then again, I should have thought about McKinsey, and McKinsey in their survey had found out that companies are even prepared to do acquisitions over $500,000 through an e-commerce transaction. And so I think that bubble is now being burst.
So you haven't seen this previously in other reports and like other studies that you made in the past with e-commerce?
Well, a lot of marketing people, I was probably being influenced too much by the vendors and marketing people in technology organizations, and also sales managers and sales executives who were saying, no way, we need to have the final conversation. We need to talk, we need to discuss, we need to negotiate, and so on and so on. I think the buyer sees it differently. So my survey was focused on the buyer, and of course we have the vendor point of view and the buyer point of view.
Yeah, perfect. Another question from Christina. Quite a big question, I guess, but we'll see if we can.
Yeah, they're typing a lot. Yeah.
Some of the biggest mistake you've seen companies make when it comes to SCM.
Well, maybe not spending enough time preparing their project and talking to the user community about their needs, and maybe getting experience of some of the tools that individuals have already got for themselves. They should be trying to ensure adoption once they've decided on the right product. And the best way to do that is to find the most suitable solution, not for management of the company, but for the user community. So good research around the user community and then developing their requirements definition. That's much more important. Very often the companies talk about the management needs. Yeah, what do we need? We need statistics, we need feedback, we need monitoring, blah, blah, blah. And so that becomes the feature list they're looking for. And that's the last thing the users want to get involved with.
Awesome. Well, with that, we unfortunately don't have time for more questions, Peter. We could probably go on for another half an hour just discussing and answer questions here because there was so much content to share with us. So thank you so much. But as you said, for everybody who's more interested to deep into this, they can just email you and get the full report. So again,
right.
That's
okay,
great.
then. Good luck with the rest of the show.
Thank you so much.
I mean, I admire the way you're doing this because, I mean, you must be nervous every time a new presenter comes on. Are they going to be there on time and so on? It must be quite nerve-wracking. You look quite calm.
But it's working fantastically.
Right. So I'm off
time,
stage.
so.
Bye, everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
All the best. Alrighty. We are moving on in our agenda. And actually, we will stay in Germany. And we will have another presenter now, Rowie Hartog, who's a revenue architect and working with Winning by Design. And Rowie will discuss and talk about sustainable growth during an economic downturn. And Rowie have been working with tech companies and high growth SaaS companies for the last 16 years. So we're digging in a deep knowledge base here on what's working and what's not working and so forth. So with that, let's see if we have Rowie with us here. Hello, Rowie. I can't hear you, Rowie. Okay, Emma, do you see if Rowie is in the...
Yes, I was going to announce that he is on his way to turn on his webcam and microphone.
Oh, okay. That's great. Perfect. Okay, so if you haven't heard about Winning by Design, Rowie will introduce you to this, of course, but it's a very interesting analytics company working with sales processes and customer success processes, especially for B2B SaaS companies. I think you can apply their processes to many different B2B sales, but especially B2B SaaS. Okay, now we can almost see you, Rowie.
All right. Can you guys hear me at least?
We can definitely hear you. There you are. Great. Welcome to today's event. Good to have you with us. And you're based in Berlin, aren't you?
Yes, Berlin, Germany.
Awesome. Then we stay in Berlin. Well, we're stoked to hear about your content. And I just hyped your speech a little bit here and Winning by Design. But I'll let you talk about, the deeper introduction here. So take it away, Rowie.
All right. Sounds good. Let me just pull up my slides. Yeah, so again, my name is Rowie Hartog, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you all today. And I'm going to talk about sustainable growth during an economic downturn, although probably not a great topic to talk about, but it also has some fantastic elements to it. And these elements are key for us to understand. And cycles are normal, and a downturn is a normal part of the cycle. So let us go back to 2008 after the last crash, in which we saw a lot of amazing companies that were born, such as Airbnb, Uber, Slack, and many others, other successful companies. And it's actually in 2011 that Mark Andreessen said that in the future, every company will become a software company. And of course, in other words, he's saying that software is eating the world, but we're saying that recurring revenue is the key enabler that allowed companies to actually eat and conquer the world. This is what happened ever since. So in the past 10 years, these are the number of unicorns per year. In 2021, there was a total of 306 new unicorns, and everything was going great because of that recurring revenue kind of model. And the SaaS index was growing much faster than the NASDAQ index until like August of this year. And yeah, things kept on going up and up, even COVID. But then something happened and the market started to change, right? And we want to take this as a learning experience, and we want to see what really changed in the market and what we could do better in order to continue our growth. And when you think of it, on the way up, everything is scalable. Scalable meaning grow at all costs. And all of a sudden, everything started to become unsustainable. And the market completely changed. So today, what I prepared for you are two topics. On the left is the scientific principles of what we're going to talk about. And why scientific principles, right? Because we at Winning by Design, we believe in data and we believe in scientific principles. And when you think of it, in our industry, the way that information is being transferred is what we call discussion on the sidewalk, right? One successful founder talking to another founder and telling him how basically he won the lottery, right? It's valuable, but it's based on a data set of one or two, but that's not enough for us. So we're going to cover the scientific part of it, and then we're going to talk about 3 actionable things that you can do tomorrow that will help you move into more sustainable growth for your company. We're going to start with, again, the scientific principles, and we're going to go back to business school and talk about the S-curve. S-curve is basically the growth of every company, including recurring revenue companies. That growth is governed by or has it doesn't grow eternally. It has a point where it starts to get to that total addressable market. Now, your total addressable market obviously can be increased by buying another company, by going into different products, by launching new products internally. But basically, that's where companies stop to grow. And just to give an example, Microsoft with the Office, Excel, PowerPoint, they have reached their total addressable market years ago, right? And basically, they're there. Their growth is basically the growth of the population. And of course, market share is being eaten by companies like Google that introduced Google Slide. So that is the S-curve. And where you are is a function of ARR. And let's see if I can actually draw here. And where you are is basically ARR and velocity. So how much time it took you to get here. And the angle of the line is basically represented by your growth rate. I think we can all agree most of the companies here probably are being funded by VCs. So this is like the traditional kind of growth. You start off series seed funding, A, B, C. This is where we call the startups up to 10 million in ARR. Scale-ups is somewhere after C, D, E until you reach an IPO. And that's basically what we're probably all are looking for if you're leading a company to reach that IPO state. And traditionally, what we saw, it takes a company to reach that IPO anywhere between 7 to 15 years. And in terms of ARR, between 100 and 350. And now, until then, we're focused on scalable growth, which is basically growth, and you're looking for velocity. And the way a company is being evaluated, the valuation is based on how fast they can grow. And what that means that VCs, the investors, give recurring revenue companies money or budget to grow, and they don't even think about the cost elements of how much it costs them to grow. And this is where we see the classical hockey stick, right? How much, this is the Bessemer report, how much time it took a company, different companies to reach 100 million ARR. Slack is probably the most famous one, Twilio as well, and you have Shopify and a few other great companies here. So in this phase, you're focused on growing at all costs. Now, it's expected that after 10 years past the IPO, you will start to be profitable. And that's what the public investors are looking for. And that is where you start to talk about sustainable growth, which is a growth, this is how Winning by Design defines it, growth as a function of cost and velocity. So you're not only looking to grow as fast as possible, but you're looking also at the cost elements of that growth. But what we saw here is that companies that recently did IPO, recently meaning in the last 2 to 3 years, they never really reached that profitability. Not only they did not reach, they're not even getting closer to become profitable. And that's why we see that big dip in the market cap of recurring revenue businesses or SaaS companies. Now, when you look at the companies that IPO'd in the past 3 years, most of them that have not reached that profitability dropped anywhere between 60, 70 to 90% in their market cap. Whereas you have the traditional enterprise SaaS solutions like Cisco is not really a SaaS, but Cisco, Microsoft, these guys did not have a big dip in their market cap. And that's because they're past that profitability point. So now what's happening is that the public investors are telling mostly the VCs, the private equities, but the VCs, hey guys, what you sold us, the companies that you sold us are nowhere near getting to that profitability. And that's why you start to see, and it trickles down to the private market, to our industries, is where it's like, hey, you need to start not only talk somewhere down the road to become profitable, you need to start thinking and planning before you do the IPO. And this is how the market is currently changing. Moving on to growth metric. Growth metric, you probably know this, right? The success rate of a company to reach an IPO from seed stage is less than 1%. And we see here companies break Series A, only less than 50% make it to that Series A, less than 27 overall make it to Series B, and so on, right? What we found, and we collected, that there are common breakpoints companies go through, and if they don't make it, this is basically where they drop off. The first obvious one is a seed company looking to gain that product market fit, somebody that is willing to pay for their product. Next breakpoint is the go-to-market fit, is where companies are looking to actually build not a scale, but are looking to build a sales team and to start finding the right markets. Then you start to focus on churn, right? Let's see that we can actually attain our existing customers. Then at that point, you start to look at multiple go-to-market motions, right? Different segments, different industries. Net retention, let's see not only if we can attain our clients, but we also want to grow and upsell and cross-sell to those companies. Interoperability is where you start to build a machine across the company to make sure everybody's talking the same language, everybody's focused on the same thing. And productivity, again, post-IPO is where companies start to focus on productivity per rep and making sure that the cost is not high. And we're going to focus on these areas, right? What do you do to find that scalability? In principle, do what works and stop doing what doesn't work. Net revenue retention, focusing on retaining and growing your existing customers. And sustainability, looking and start to look at the cost elements of that. The next scientific principle and model that I want to present is the data model, right? Traditionally, we had the classical sales and marketing funnel, which is the acquisition part. lead generation, lead development, and then the sales team. But looking only at that part is not enough when we're talking about sustainability, when we're looking at growing from our existing customers. And what we're trying to see here, and what we're trying to say, is that there's a new first principles in recurring revenue businesses, right? And it is that recurring revenue is a result of recurring impact. And that recurring impact happens on the right side of what we now call is the bow tie. So because we're subscription-based mostly, if the client does not get that recurring impact, we will not see that recurring revenue. So we need to start looking at the right side as well, and looking and making sure that everything is built together and working in a straight line and in a one unified type of machine. On the data model, on the bow tie, we plug in different metrics, the volume metrics and the conversion metrics. This is how we measure this. And this is just one example of maybe two-stage go-to-market motion that we have the different terminology here. And the growth formula, I'm going to go into a bit of the math behind this. And this is basically the algorithm of how an entire company go-to-market department within a company operates, right? So we're starting off on the left side, and I'm going to read this out again. Don't be scared of the numbers. It takes 114 MQLs with a conversion rate of 3.2 to create 3.7 SQLs, with a conversion rate of 84 to create 3 opportunities, with a win rate of 32 to create 1 commit, 1 client, 1 win. Average discount is 23. And 1 win within that company creates or generates $18,408 in ARR. Now that's looking at the left side. And some of you might have different versions of this. And you can measure this per rep, per team, per region, per product, etc. On the right side, this is where you start to see like retention and expansion and how it populates each year. And you can calculate the lifetime value of that specific one deal. So one deal in a lifetime of 5 years generate $111,000. So this is the scientific principles on which I'm going to base my recommendations to you guys. So we're going to look at 3 recommendations. When you think a bit about it, and we're looking at the entire bow tie, left side acquisition, right side the expansion, there are basically 3 ways you can grow as a company. You can generate more leads, bringing more leads, top of the funnel kind of activities. Improve win rate, all right? Improve win rate is here. And expand from our existing clients. Now let's dive into each one of them. Bringing more leads is complicated, right? If it was easy, you probably would have done that. And of course, the more leads you have, the quality drops and causes the conversion rate metrics to drop across the bow tie. It takes quarters to implement, right? You go to an event, you nurture those leads. It takes a few months and quarters, and it's expensive to do. Improving win rate is overcoming habits because you're dealing with people, right? And you need to train them and you need to coach them. However, you gain the quickest results and it's relatively low cost compared to other solutions that we have. And focusing on expansion, right? That usually means hiring more CS team, reorganization. There's a long and quick hit. We'll not talk about that, but usually takes long and it's expensive because we're talking about hiring more people. So for today, we're going to focus on improving win rate for the next 5 minutes. Let's see how we say that. So coming back to the left side and the growth formula, as I explained before, let's focus on the discount. This is usually when we come to advise companies and consult with companies. This is one of the easiest and first thing to improve, right? Looking at the discount rate. We think that there's a connection, that there's a linear connection between discount and win rate, right? There's something in the psychology of how we do sales that we think like selling apples in the local market, that if we lower the price, we'll have more demand, right? But that is not true when talking about SaaS and recurring revenue businesses. We did a research and we studied this in different companies, different reps, and compare that and different companies, and we saw that there's no real linear connection between the discount and the win rate, because SaaS is bought on priority and not budget. I'll repeat that. SaaS is bought on priority and not budget. If you're selling a $20,000 a year solution, if you lower and give a discount of $2,000, $5,000, that's not really doing an impact on the buyer's cash flow. So there's no linear connection here. So just by stop doing that, and I'm not saying stop altogether, right? But going from 23 and lowering that to 15, you can have a huge improvement of 12% in your discount or the total ARR for a single account. So the way to do that, stop discounting, and instead of discounting, trade, right? Pay up front, trade that. You want a 3% discount, trade that in a pay up front kind of thing. 5%, give, let's sign a multi-year contract. 3%, execute by this date. 5% intro to industry peers. When you think of it, when I was a salesperson, the discount policy was, hey, if you want to give 10%, go to your boss. If you want to give 15, go to the VP of sales. And if you want to give above 15, go to the CEO. This is what we usually see as a discount policy. But no, let's implement a trade policy. And how did you do that? You also want to enable your teams to trade and not negotiate. And our team members are looking for that sort of guidance and enablement. We at Winning by Design like to show everything visually. So this is an example of how to do a proper trade, not negotiation, trade meeting with a prospect. So you plan beforehand, qualify, define the needs, propose, ask, then trade one item compared to the other. And that's how we write down everything and enable our sales reps to trade. The other example that I want to focus on today is looking at win rate. So for example, in this example, the win rate here is 32%. And we tend to think that win rate is a linear, win rate is the number of wins divided by the number of opportunities, right? That's how we tend to think of that. So when we want to increase the number of wins, I want to double. If I want to double, I want to double my win rate. Let's see how we can do that without doubling the win rate, right? So instead of looking at one linear activity, let's break the win rate down to different activities. For this example, I'm breaking it down to meetings, right? This could be a discovery meeting, a demo meeting, stakeholder meeting, negotiation, and then proposal meeting, right? And let's say that the success rate of each meeting is 80% to make it to the next meeting, right? And for the sake of the example, of course, it's not going to be 80% across the board. It's going to change. The first meeting has one success rate or conversion rate and so on, right? So I can also look at the win rate as 80% by the power of 5, right? This is the math behind this. If I just do small improvements on each one of those activities, by 2%, I increase the success rate. By 2%, I have a huge impact on the overall numbers. So instead of 32 win rate, I'm 37, which is almost 15% improvement in the win rate. And these are marginal gains that have a huge impact on the overall win rate. And again, you ask, how do you do that, right? You achieve mastery level and focus and train and coach your salespeople to do better discovery meetings, to demonstrate and do better demos, to navigate the decision process, the decision criteria, right? and you make them experts on how to provoke, how to multi-thread, how to navigate priority-based decisions, right? This is all under managing the deal. And here too, we have blueprints, how to enable the different sales rep to do a better job here. And it could be much more detailed, right? How do you do a disco? What do you do a demo? When do you start to provoke? You can do the provocation, provocative kind of sales strategy. You can do a consultative. You can do a solution-based, which is another blueprint that we have. And what happens when there's no fit, they go dark. This is all something that we can teach and enable our sales rep. So this was my second example. Combine them to both of them, right? 14. And together we have a 26% increase in ARR just by doing these, I wouldn't say simple, but easy to execute activities and improvements. So this is what I have for you today. So just to summarize what we talked about. So the first thing that you can do tomorrow is understand where you are on the growth model. What are the different breakpoints? What do you need to focus on? What do you need to measure? And what's going to be your next thing that you need to prepare for, the next breakpoint? After you do that, you define a uniform data model for the entire company. Make sure that everybody speaks the same language. Everybody, that you're not only looking at the left side, the classical sales and marketing funnel, but you're also looking at the right side. So looking at the entire bow tie. Define a growth formula, which is the algorithm of your go-to-market machine. Make sure that you capture that. And then do small improvements, such as lowering your discount rate and improving your win rate through marginal gains across that sales process. And this is what I wanted to present to you. And I will leave you with this quote, right? Science is a way of thinking much more than it is a body of knowledge. And some of the things here might seem obvious, but connecting it to the actual math behind this shows you how powerful some of the actions could be here. That is it.
Thank you, Rui. That was so interesting and fantastically how well explained. A quite complex model you have there in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, we have a lot of materials around this. So all of our IP is available, videos, books, blueprints, everything is available here. This is just a small teaser. Hope to see you guys. Follow us on LinkedIn. Again, all our materials are open sourced materials.
Yeah, that's exciting that you have open sourced more or less everything you do in terms of IP. So that's exciting. So Emma, we have time for one or two questions here, maybe.
Yes, we do. We've got a couple here in the chat. And the first one is from Michael, and he's wondering how to best make sure that everyone in the team, as well as the company as a whole, is on board on the sustainable growth journey. Do you have any tips there, Rui?
Yeah, it's not easy, right? And usually it should come from top down because we're all used to focus on winning more deals, grow at all costs. So usually it needs really a change in the culture of the company. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so you need not only to focus on what we call the left side of the bow tie, but also on the right side of the bow tie, focusing on customer success and getting more revenue coming from your existing clients, because that's cost way less than acquiring new logos. Yeah, and start off with that, right? And start off with the data behind that, and you can justify why doing certain activities and focusing on different areas makes more sense economically than doing the traditional grow at all costs kind of activities.
So the data leads the way, like convince the teams that this is the way to go, and like let's go on the sustainable way, and the data tells us the way, sort of, or
exactly. Companies that won't go into sustainable mode unless they have fantastic products, and then it's like, just continue what you're doing. The product basically sells itself. But in a lot of companies, it's not. And that's where you really need to start changing that culture.
Super. We have another one here. And it concerns AI. To what extent do you think that AI tools can facilitate B2B sales operations in an economic recession? Is this something to be prioritized more or not?
I don't think we're there yet, right? Everything that we talked about, and we do a lot of math, and when we consult with companies, we do a lot of that kind of let's look at data and see where the problems there are. We ourselves have not been able to find valuable solutions that help us do that. So it's a lot of human intelligence behind that. So yeah, we're hoping, and we have ideas of how we can take what's in our minds and processes in a company and put this in a computer. I don't think we're there yet.
But do you think the future holds some kind of AI?
That question you probably need to ask AI experts. Right?
Yeah,
I'm nearly a revenue, recurring revenue expert. Don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I have one last question for you, Roy. You discussed a bit about the win rate and how that's gives quick results. Is that always the case, would you say, or is there some factors that could possibly hinder that, the quick results in the winning rate?
It's always the case, but it's not always easy to do or even possible to do, right? Right. First of all, there are some elements that are outside of our ability to influence, such as like if I don't have the right product or I'm selling to the wrong ICPs, there's a certain amount of things that I, as a revenue leader, as the go-to-market leader, can do if the product is not right for our specific segment. I can, for example, flag that out, but there's not much I can do there. There's some win rates that I cannot really go, and I'm limited there. So I would start to look at other areas that are the low-hanging fruit and provide better opportunities there.
Thank you. Sounds great. I think that was all the questions that we had. Thank you so much, Roy, for a great and insightful presentation.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Roy. Take care. Catch you on the flip side.
All right. And we're moving on in the agenda. Let's see here. So next speaker has over 20 years of experience of helping technology, software, and service companies build and operate or outsource an effective B2B lead generation process. I'm talking about our host, Jacob Löwenbrand, that you already see on the virtual stage. And Jacob, you're also an expert in marketing for tech companies, and today you will be sharing a bit about your knowledge and insights regarding ramp up your B2B sales efforts with growth teams. Excited to hear it. So take it away, Jacob.
Well, thank you, Emma. Yes, and I will talk a little bit about growth teams here today. I've been in sales since 95, so 25-ish years plus. And I started Bright Vision 22 years ago as an agency helping tech companies increase their revenue. And that's basically what we have been doing all this way since then. So as I said in the beginning, we deliver growth for tech companies, and we're in the business to accelerate the spread of technology innovations. So one thing we have done over the last few years, we have done a lot of things over these 22 years since we started. And something we have talked a lot about and starting to help clients with over the last 1-2 years is growth teams. And I will talk a little bit about the experiences about that. So maybe there's some insights that might be useful for you and your team as well to figure out. So what's a growth team? Well, what we have realized is that some companies that come to us, they want to grow real fast, and they need multiple different disciplines or experts helping them with different parts of the bow tie funnel. We actually have starting to use that analogy that Roy just talked about, because there are so many elements in that bow tie funnel that needs to be implemented or accelerated, or just putting some person on running that part of the funnel, so to say. And we have digital and inbound specialists, as well as the outbound team, where we have lead researchers, biz dev representatives, SDRs that we define more like multi-channels, social selling atop of the phone and so forth. And also the inside sales reps, the ISRs, who actually executes the demos, send the contracts, close the deals, and so forth, drives the closed pipeline. And if you have a technology where you need to push through and expand the market quite quickly, you need to work on these different parts in parallel. And that's what we've been doing for a few different clients over the last few years, where we set up a multidiscipline team that we call a growth team that can work in parallel and drive different parts of the funnel in order to accelerate that process for the clients. Maybe it's a new product, maybe it's a startup or a scale up that just needs more power, more larger team and different team for different markets and so forth. Maybe it's something else that makes it important to accelerate fast. And that's what we have been trying to do. So we have all these different roles that work together as an orchestra, where we try to get them to support each other. Where we start out with the top of the funnel, where we have pay specialists giving air cover for our BDRs and SDRs that book meetings and drive the SQLs. We have the inbound leads that they follow up on as well, if we have content offers or different events that might drive MQLs. We have the ISR who take over the qualified SQLs and book demos with them and so forth. We have the product manager that acts as a strategist and keep track of all the metrics. The martech specialist, especially if we don't have a fixed platform that we share with the client. We need to build a platform together. And then, of course, the designers and copywriters who supports everything with content and sales engagement material and so forth. So just a quick example in a few minutes where we talk to, where we help the company, a B2B tech SaaS company, to grow their sales significantly in 6 months in the European market. And what we did was that we had a discussion with this company. They have a legal tech solution, and for different reasons, it was important that they reach new markets, which in a certain time frame, because they were on a deadline for some legal issues and things that actually made these investments quite hot, so to say. So they needed to expand fast. They didn't only want to cover one country. Actually, they were heading for European markets, not only a single country, but we prioritized and tried to focus on the most important markets. And they needed a full funnel support from cold prospect all the way to close deal. And they asked us, hey, can you help us with this? We need to go fast. We won't have time to hire these people ourselves. So how can we do this? And we started out working, and we said, we need to work tightly together. We need to do this in an outsourcing, insourcing kind of setup, not a black box where we just deliver closed deals or something like that. We have been working really, really tight. And the tech stack is actually owned by the client. So we have helped them design it, set up, choose different systems and so forth. And we have a tight discussion where we said we need to work in an agile way with close iterations. Every week should be a little bit more fine-tuned, because since we need to expand that rapidly, we also need to keep track of all the KPIs, how to improve a little bit every week and so forth on all the different moving parts and all the markets we're covering. So we have measured and tried to monitor the campaign really, really closely. We have also tried to build SOPs, standing operating procedures, and use and apply best practices from different B2B SaaS insights as winning by design, etc., in order to improve that areas. And a few learnings in this area. And the result. How have it gone so far? Well, I can't disclose any revenue, but we have started to see significant monthly closed revenue coming in on a yearly contract basis. We have 14 people in the team after 6 months. We have native teams for Sweden, Finland, Germany, and France. So we're covering a few major markets, not the whole European market, but this is what we felt was a good pace to expand it in combination to the size of the company and so forth. And we have a full funnel team that actually drives the different closing, and with the ISRs closing the deals and presenting the demos, and the BDRs booking the meetings and following up on the incoming MQLs, etc., etc. The data team have been working really hard to support this as well. And since there's a lot of markets, several segments and so forth, and we have been working really closely with them. But we have seen significant improvements and increase of closed deals in only 6 months, starting from scratch together with the clients. And we have done 6 learnings I just want to share with you in a few minutes here. When you start something quite aggressive like that, fire bullets, then cannonballs. We have had this agile approach that we can't start with 4 countries in parallel. Let's start with 1 country, get that up to speed, see that we have a positive traction on the most important KPIs, and then expand it and copy it to the next country and so forth. So you need to have your ICP clear for you. We need to have the pitch, the sales deck and presentation and contracts and everything in order. And we have worked really hard with the client to get that in place. We have also reinvented a lot of things in the process. And just as Peter Neal talked about sales enablement and different aspects of that, we can only underscore that and say it's so important. And you need to have strong sales enablement and support for the sales calls and the demos and so forth from the get-go. We were lacking a few parts of that, and that delayed the result a little bit, where we actually could have been more aggressively if we just had invested a bit more upfront on that. So make sure you have that in place. And in combination with that, make things look good. Since we were in such a hurry to get things going and started selling before everything was in place and so forth, it was a little bit crappy in the design and text and formatting and so forth. So that also took a while we get everything looking really crisp and tight and so forth. And it's something also we could have been a bit earlier on, but that have also improved the different closing ratios and so forth. Analyze everything. We have spent a lot of time analyzing, and we have talked to many different all the time, have overinvested in managerial time, so to say. And we have one person who's more or less only fully engaged in listening, analyzing, following up, coaching, both the calls, the demos, and the prospecting and the different stages of the sales process. It's so important that we have managerial bandwidth to coach and to analyze and to follow up. And also that's where you actually can base your insights on building best practices. So when you actually understand it by spending the time you need to understand, oh, this is closing. Now we have 10 examples of this, how we can actually create better output in this area or that area, and we can improve the close ratios. Just as Rowie talked about the different KPIs there in the bow tie, we need to document that so we can also educate and say, this is our best practice for this area of the sales process, or for this stage in the funnel. We need to do it like this, and constantly upgrade it, but also constantly keep everybody in the loop. So we have built an online learning platform where we constantly upgrade and continue to improve on the educations there. So everybody is in the loop, and we have continuous dialogue around that. Also, while doing a lot of things, a lot of experimentation, a lot of small fixes all the time, still keep 2 thoughts in the head at the same time. How can we improve next week's KPIs 1-2% while still thinking long term? So we also can see that we can find the balancing of creating a pipeline for next year and not thinking too short term in terms of, oh, they won't close this year. Well, we skip them and so forth. So we need to build a long-term nurturing process in parallel with the short-term closing and so forth. And it's important to keep that in mind, that both closing short term, but also working long term. With that, I can say that that was a very, very short presentation. But our multidisciplinary growth teams that have both inside sales consultants of different sorts, depending on which area of the sales funnel they are working on, together with the digital experts on the inbound team, driving the leads, nurturing, giving air cover with paid advertising and content and so forth, and educating the middle of the funnel so they can do an educated selection and commitment and so forth. That have been a really successful case together with this client, and we have seen it in several cases, and that's something we think might be a good way to go about, to having these blitz scaling teams that might come in on a contract basis. And if you see long-term success, you can of course hire your internal team doing the same stuff, but it will inevitably take a longer time. So for trial out, quick expansion projects and things like that, a growth team could be a good solution for you. That was a little bit what I had. I'm not sure we have time for questions. Do we, Emma?
We're a bit short on time, but maybe we have time for one question.
Okay.
Yeah, we have one here from Julia. How to best scale up a modern sales machine for a multinational company with different geographical and like work culture context? Do you have any quick tips on that? Maybe that's a bigger question and takes time to answer, but
yeah,
you know, some quick.
Yeah, you can probably answer it from many angles. But what we have seen working is to prioritize the geographical markets, and not for the European market specifically, where we are the experts, so to say. That's our home market. It is a big difference between the geographical countries. So you need to have some kind of fluent native speaking team. That gives you a big advantage compared to offshore sellers or American sales team calling into Europe and so forth, or covering the whole nation, the whole continent in English. So I would say go with native speaking teams, but try to prioritize which countries you would like to start with, and then copy the model, but do it in a cultural sensitive way when you go to the next country. There are big differences, not only between the bigger countries like France, UK, and Germany, which have very different ways of communicating and driving deals in their organizations. Also in a quite culturally coherent area like the Nordics, we see still a lot of different ways of selling in Finland versus Sweden and so forth. So it needs culture context, and we also need to work both, trying to fix those things. But that's my 2 cents maybe on doing a multinational rollout in Europe at least.
Super. That's a great answer. Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, well, you're welcome, and thank you. Now we're moving on in our agenda. And we have a very interesting speaker coming up now. Dale Dupree, who's the founder and CFO of the Sales Rebellion, based in Florida. In Tennessee, and have in Knoxville, and have made a name out of himself on LinkedIn and other social media as a sales warrior and Sales Rebellion, and formerly also known as a copier warrior, and so many interesting insights. We had the opportunity to talk to Dale in our podcast half a year ago, and we said we just need to have Dale coming back at some of our events, and now we're happy to have you with us, Dale. So welcome to today's event. See if you can.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
That's strange. Hold on. Let's see here. There we go.
Oh, there we go, Dale. So great to have you with us.
Cheers, my friend. I appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, I'm so stoked to hear about your content. So take it away, man.
Thank you, my friend. Hello, B2B Tech Sales Summit. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak with all of you today. I'm grateful for your time, your attention this morning. Well, morning for me. I'm in Central Time Zone right now, traveling, doing some on-site training with a team out here in the Midwest. I just love sales, y'all. I just want to say that real quick. I freaking love sales. Got to interact with some amazing people yesterday. Got to enjoy some local culture. And it's all in the name of sales ultimately, which, to me is just the literal essence of life. I believe that life is sales and sales is life. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the concept of a winning mindset inside of the sales world. We call it choosing legendary inside of the sales rebellion. I just want to give y'all some juice today. I got some fun, tangible concepts and some really good rebellious stuff for you. But first, before we get started, I just want to let everybody know who I am. Who doesn't know Dale Dupree? Back in the day, people called me the Copier Warrior. In 2007, I actually left the entertainment industry. I had gotten signed to a record label, a major record label, and a touring band when I was 17 years old. And for about 5 years, I went on a journey, on an adventure, playing music every night for strange people, and literally honing my sales skills. I was learning this concept of building community, and I was learning this concept of capturing attention. I was learning this concept and identity around what curiosity actually is and the power and connection behind something so simple. And in the process of that, I was chasing my dream as well, too. Unfortunately, circumstances, unfavorable circumstances, I should say, involving drugs with one of the members of my band led to the band breaking up for the better. And I just want to say, like, for anybody that's like, "Woo, what was that? What happened, Dale? What's the drama?" The person that struggled at the time is now a millionaire, and he has 2 kids, and he's living a fantastic life, and he loves himself, and it's a great end to the story, right? But at the time, it feels like, when you're living your dream and you're pursuing something like music and entertainment, and your job every night is to just play it for strange people. It's a fantastic feeling, right? It could feel like the whole world is crashing down in those moments and that you're losing everything. However, I trusted the process. I had faith in the things that were happening. Not that they were happening for a reason per se, but that there was good that would come of them if we were intentional about these moments and that we didn't ignore them or try to just push through them, for the wrong reasons. So what I did is I came back to Florida, where I'm born and raised in Orlando, and I asked my daddy for a job. my father was an incredible human being. He was my best friend. And in growing up, a lot of my friends, I'd say 9 out of 10 in my neighborhood, they didn't have a dad. Right. So I witnessed the fact that I was very privileged to have such an amazing human in my life that I called my father, that was very intentional and very present in my walk as I grew up. And he supported my rebellion and supported my choices to go and play in a musical act and leave the nest and not go to college and do the traditional things that everybody else was or had, especially in the lineage of my family. And I appreciated it. And so I came back to I felt love from my father. And so it was very easy for me to come back to him, even though it was like the hardest day of my life. I wrote like a 4-page dissertation about why I should be hired by his company, right? I put a lot of pressure on myself. I thought, oh man, I wonder if he's going to say no. And of course, my father welcomed me with open arms. And he said, listen, I'll let you come work here, but you've got to earn your way up, and I'm going to start you in sales. And I guess realistically, at the end of the day, I looked at sales as the bottom of the totem pole. I came to work for him, which slowly but surely and over time, the narrative of that and my mindset around it has drastically changed, which we'll talk about today as well too. But that rebellious nature really kicked me into gear and made me say, all right, if I'm going to go and I'm going to work for my dad, if I'm going to follow in his footsteps, I need to do something that's also very Dale and very authentic. And so after a couple of years of literally sucking at sales, I found my wings, I found my way, and I was able to become the Copier Warrior. Anybody wants to understand who the Copier Warrior was, you can literally go to copierwarrior.com. I still own the URL, and I've left a lot of the content on there is outdated, right? The last time I updated it was 2018, but I left the site up. So you can go and you can watch the video commercials that I used to drive people to back on the landing page. You can see the crazy images of me stabbing copy machines with swords and the wild, wild west of what I believed was copier sales in the flesh. Now, the thought here is that by building a personal brand, by being audacious, and a lot of things I'm about to talk to you all about in regards to the recipe of a rebel, a successful sales rebel as we see it, and the mindset, the winning mindset of a successful salesperson. I realized that in my industry, it was very much 99% of people did the same thing every day over and over and over again, which is the definition of insanity. I recognized that the people that I sought to serve in my industry, really, they'd heard it all before. Who am I? Walking in saying, hi, I'm a copier salesperson. Now, I was very door-to-door centric as well, too. I did pick up the phone every once in a while. And in the early stages, I did pick up the phone a lot. But really, the game was to go and knock on doors. So if anybody's ever done telemarketing or done door knocking or sold satellite dishes or cable TV or whatever, you probably understand the things that I went through. Now, I was knocking on doors for billion-dollar companies that were in the aerospace world, all the way down to financial advisors that, you maybe had a portfolio of $500,000 worth of somebody's investments, right? So large to small businesses. And I mean that when I say that very realistically. So I built this brand to be able to stand out from the crowd and to be able to create something much more efficient and effective for myself, because I believed in Dale. And I wanted Dale to be able to achieve the things and the goals that he desired. But I also wanted to understand that my community deserved better. And I never wanted to become one of these salespeople that just did it for 40 years to make a paycheck, to pay my bills, to retire. Instead, I wanted to create impact. I wanted to build a legacy. I wanted to give people the thing that they deserved throughout the process of my walk. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the legacy that ran through my veins and still does today, that was gifted to me by my father. A man who did exactly the things I'm talking about. He didn't wield a sword and call himself the copier warrior. That's just crazy man Dale, right? But my dad did serve his community. He was a servant leader. He wasn't a salesperson. He wasn't a business owner. He was a friend. He was a confidant. He was somebody in the industry that cared about more than just the copy machine. He wanted your business to be successful. He wanted to better understand how it was that he could support you beyond just the processes, the workflows, the things that he could fix ultimately. And that's the copier warrior. That's Dale Dupree. I was in the industry for 13 years before bowing out in 2019 and founding the Sales Rebellion with my best friend, Jeff Villegas. The two of us have been running the organization since then, coming up on our 4-year anniversary in about 4 months. And I'm excited to be here today because of those things. Because for me, what this company is, and that story I just told you is the identity of something that a lot of us are looking for. And maybe it's not you in particular that's here today, but maybe you have a mentee or somebody that looks up to you, or sales reps in a bullpen that you manage, that you can create this same type of impact for, that my father did for me, that I hope to relate to you today to send back to those folks. So what is the mindset of a rebel? What is choosing legendary? When we look at these 4 pillars at the foundation of everything that we do as sales rebels. And what I want to say real quickly about a sales rebel is a sales rebel leads with love. A sales rebel isn't somebody with a pitchfork and a torch, going and burning the city down, right? A sales rebel is somebody that is just tired of the monotony, tired of the mediocrity, tired of the status quo. And they believe that there's something more to themselves, to the sales process, and that people that are in the community in which they seek to serve deserve something better, something greater. And so these pillars are very important because of that. The first pillar inside of the mindset of a rebel is the first impression concept. What is a first impression? Well, we believe that a first impression is very important, and that a first impression should be an experience that somebody has with you. So think about a cold call. Hi, my name is Dale. I work for the Sales Rebellion. Do you have a few minutes for me to tell you what it is that I do? And maybe we can book a 15-minute calendar appointment afterwards. And I know I'm botching that, but listen, like summarizing that in that way is really, that's how the prospect hears it. It's very mediocre. It's very generic. It's very plain. It's very boring, right? And a lot of times in those pitches as well too, we do things like say, this is what my company does. And we boast about features and advantages and the product, right? But the customer doesn't care. And in the first impression, what people care about the most is how you make them feel. They're not going to remember what you sold even after a 2-minute talk. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And so in a first impression, we believe that the experience we give, I should say, and giving an experience is very important. So we've come up with concepts like using direct mail pieces as an example. We have an entire letter campaign that we send out that's themed. There are digital graphic images on all of the envelopes and the letters, things like coffee stains, things like burn marks all over them. And we tell people, hey, listen, you hate cold calls in a nutshell. which is why I wanted to give you a different experience, express a little bit about how I can help, what I can fix. And we don't talk about things like products, features, advantages, and benefits. Instead, we have fun. We create an environment of safety for the person that's reading, and also an outlet for them to be expressive and say, yeah, I do. I hate sales calls. I can't stand it. I even, what I find funny about it is that even salespeople that say things like, oh, I don't hate sales calls. I've listened to those people pick up a spam call or say, oh my God, another one of these, and hit decline instead of seeking out that person, meeting them where they are and trying to help them. So we're all guilty of it ultimately, no matter what. I try my best in any situation, especially when someone's pitching me or cold calling me, to have this mindset and to remember that I can make a good first impression back on that person, regardless of whether or not I need what they're selling or I agree with the stature in which they're presenting their product and service. But a first impression for a rebel is all about the experience we give. If we focused on that more often, our email outreach would change drastically. Our phone calls in which we dial to people would change tremendously as well, too. And this ties into the second pillar of communication. We believe in the accommodation theory, which is a psychological theory around the concept of how somebody prefers to be spoken to. So through a first impression, focusing on things like communication and understanding accommodation theories and how people, don't like sales calls ultimately, and that proactive measures in the way that we speak to somebody is very effective instead of reactive measures or speaking about things that someone doesn't really care about. And a lot of the time, even when we give pain points as an example, because those are very popular in the sales world to give, we're poking at something that somebody doesn't want to just admit. How many times in your life have you been going through pain as an example and you've thought to yourself, man, I love talking about problems. I love talking about pain. I love talking about this issue that I'm having. Yeah, I just freaking love it. That's not the case, right? I'm somebody that struggled from depression my whole life. I freaking hate talking about it. It's not fun. It's not a good thing. Right. So I want people to think about that when they're thinking about this communication theory in general and how they are setting themselves up for a good first impression through those communication theories. How do we accommodate people through our communication? How are we lifting people up? How are we pointing out things that we can fix without poking and prodding at an open wound, as the sales world likes to put it, and pushing on pain and making somebody desire to have it fixed? Oh, it hurts so bad. Like, that doesn't sound like a good experience to me. It sounds like a terrible one, as a matter of fact. Which goes into the next piece of the pillars, with driving business, right? Driving business is about allowing somebody else to literally tell you, hey, I'd like to do business with you. So through the process of a good first impression, a solid communication foundation that focuses on, sure, tonality and body language, but also like the words we use, right? People say that, or the theory is, I should say, and the statistics are that 7% of your communication is actually the words that come out of your mouth. And so a lot of people tend to just like not pay attention to that 7% and say, well, body language and tonality is more important. And I would challenge that. And I would literally fight that and rebel against it, especially if I'm you listening, because 7%, what it really tells us is that we have a very small amount of words, chances, I should say, with the words we use, a small amount, a very small chance that the words we use are powerful enough that the person listening will connect with that and they will want and desire more from us, which drives business, right? Because business is actually relationships ultimately. And what I mean by that is that business is somebody saying, I would like to trust you. I would like to build on this credibility that you have started with me through this great first impression, this experience that you're giving, this communication style that I'm not used to hearing, because it's very human, because it connects beyond the box of business and ultimately provides something for somebody beyond what it is that they expected to experience when they saw a phone number coming through that they didn't recognize, right? That wasn't saved in their phone in the first place, right? It's a feeling, y'all. And so driving business is more about trust and credibility than it is just getting an appointment, right? Yeah, and I'd like to just caveat like the relationship side. Like a lot of people say trust and like, right? Somebody has to like you and they have to trust you. Like, nobody has to like you. Ultimately, sometimes when you speak the truth through those first impressions and those communication theories, even, it's not always something that people like. They go, ooh, this is kind of hard. This is like very direct language. This is very truthful, very blunt, very honest. I don't know that I like this, but I feel that I can trust this person. That's a literal thing that happens to people. And the study of neuroscience, the study of the brain, tells us that in those moments that people conflict essentially emotionally with logic, right? And the emotion says, I trust this. I might not like this, but I trust this, right? So I want everybody to think about that concept as well too, that you're not always going to be liked as a salesperson, right? Because and that's your job. Your job is to do the stuff that's hard. Your job is to risk a little bit and make sure that somebody hears the truth that they need to hear and to understand how it is that they can be better in the first place, right? So the concept of destiny versus defeat comes from this. And real simply put, we believe that you cannot get to destiny without defeat. That's the bottom line. We cannot, unless you have failed and understood what it means to fail, you cannot win. You cannot seek that destiny. That means you have to risk. That means you have to seek discomfort. It means that you have to try things that might be unpopular, right? But that are human, that are very eccentric around your authenticity and who it is that you are, because people buy from those they trust. And so the concept of choice comes into this. I believe that destiny is found through intentional work. So I believe that you will fail on your way to destiny because you intentionally sought after those failures, saying to yourself, it doesn't matter if I lose, because ultimately I will win. This one little battle doesn't matter. I'm fighting a war. I'm in it for the long run. If we're focused on what is on the horizon and not what sits directly in front of us and what is on top of the mountain, no matter how frightening it might look or intimidating it might be, we will change our outcomes. Because I don't believe in happenstance or luck or coincidence, right? If you're living a lifestyle like that, why? Why do that? The whole thought process for me is let's take the concept of choice and let's put it to action. And so we talk about these three pillars essentially inside of the rebellion that I want to put out here and I for discussion, if anybody has any questions after this as well, but just want to throw it out here. The mediocre, the warrior, and the legend. I believe that most salespeople in the sales world are in the mediocre camp, and I don't believe that's a bad thing either. I think it's just part of what we've cultured in the sales world. We've cultured mediocrity. It's as simple as that. Now, the thought process is that I'm hitting quota, right? So I'm in the mediocre world, right? Like, because realistically, to be that warrior, to rise above mediocrity is to say, a quota doesn't define me. It doesn't decide what I get to do with my life and who I am and the money I'd like to make, the destiny I'd like to achieve, the legacy I'd like to leave, right? So coming above those things and rising over them is that warrior status, that person that decides like, hey, I'm going to make a personal brand, call myself the copier warrior. I don't care how crazy people think I am, because I recognize that people deserve something more personalized. I recognize that people deserve experiences. I recognize that people deserve something more than just a boring generic copy machine that prints paper and that's it. But instead they need somebody that can rise above that mediocrity and say, hey, I recognize you. I see you. And I know that the experiences that you have, and I'm not here to sell you something, make a commission, and dip out. Instead, I'm here to fight. I'm here to fight for you, not against you. I'm here to defend you. I'm here to be that ultimate defender inside of the status of a warrior. And that's what it is. It's the ultimate defender. It's the person that protects their community, that believes that being involved inside of it is important because it can change the lives of the people that they run into, which leads to the final pillar, which is the legend. The legend for me is his name is Curtis Dupree, is my father. The legend is the person that behind closed doors does the right thing when no one's looking, does the right thing. The legend is the person that doesn't seek affirmation or seek any kind of compliment or somebody saying, oh, man, you're an amazing salesperson. They don't seek that type of attention. What they seek is to make someone else feel like they are the best person that they could potentially and possibly be. And in sales, we can enable that. Y'all might think I'm crazy. Dale, you're talking about Skittles and rainbows over here about sales. Like, hell yeah, I am. Because I've lived this life. I've experienced it and I've understood it. And so I want to leave y'all with this before I take.
So, oh, there you are, Dale. Yeah. Sorry, you're
on a roll too. I like this room. There's no one in this room. Nobody got the juice.
Yes. Well,
Yes,
anyway, yeah. It cut out a little bit there the last minute, but anyway, great presentation. Thank you so much, Dale. That was awesome. Even though we might have missed a little bit of the punchline there. And I think maybe we have a question or two, Emma, for Dale.
Yes, we do. So Christina has a question. How to best coach sales teams and as a sales executive to make sure that the mindset is right, and aligned across team members?
I love this question. I think the first thing that you have to recognize is, how do you meet people where they are? And sometimes there's discomfort in that for us because we might see somebody doing something as wrong, but you can't point it out that way for people. You have to meet them in that place, and you have to help them understand that there could be a better way potentially. Hey, would you be willing to explore that with me? We'll do it together. Like walking alongside somebody is the best way to coach them instead of and thinking about the word right. I love the word, obviously, because we want to do what's right, but ultimately remember that people define that based on their perception and perspective. So being able to come down to somebody's level, meet them there, and be with them throughout that process is a much better way for them to have an awakening and say, oh, wow, maybe I can do this a little bit better, a little bit differently, and tap into my true potential.
Awesome. And what are your tips for making the best impression when prospecting in a digital context?
Digital is a great place, right? My boy Morgan Ingram, I think, is here at some point. He's speaking. He talks a lot about voice notes inside of LinkedIn, and it's something I found a long time ago because I use the mobile app more than I do the PC. And so doing things like sending somebody a voice note over LinkedIn when you connect with them is powerful. It humanizes things. It creates a good first impression, but also an experience for people. They can, instead of like reading context, they can hear it. They can feel it. They can be changed by it. So thinking about the non-traditional approaches inside of digital, like animated business cards or sending video, or there's a lot of things that you can do, even from just like sending someone a QR code that translates into a digital world through a phone that they scan, right? So there's a lot to it, but I would say just think a little bit outside of the box. That there's a lot of very simple applications that you can apply today that are sitting right in front of you and that are free to use.
Yeah, so many possibilities in this digital context that we have today, for sure. As a last question before we move on in the agenda, what is the biggest mistake you've done in sales so far?
Like every day there's some type of mistake, right? Ultimately, and that the awareness of understanding that mistakes happen and that you're not perfect is extraordinarily important. When people ask me questions like this, it's not really easy for me to go to the biggest mistake in sales, because remember earlier I talked about that I believe that life is sales and sales is life, and so I blur the line. And when I see sales and I see a mistake in sales, I think it's really not that big of a deal. Right, a sales mistake, like missing a number on accident or in your proposal, like, that sucks, right? But that's not a big deal, right? I think the biggest mistakes I think of for myself are things that I don't necessarily regret, but I look at as I have to right this ship for myself, or things like the amount of time I spent with my father in my business. I took it for granted. And I lost my dad in 2016 to cancer. I don't have him anymore. My best friend, my hero, the man that created who you see today. And so I look at that as a mistake for myself, and something that not that I dwell on as a mistake, but that I look at and I go, I'm not going to do that to my son. I'm not going to force him to be with me either, but I'm going to be that present father for him as well too, like my dad was for me, and break the curse, that I stepped into as a very arrogant person at some point in my life, because I was a child ultimately, right? Yeah. So that I love the question, but ultimately I would tell people to reflect for themselves on mistakes, as in the sales world. It's like, it's okay. Nobody died. You're all right. It's not a big deal, but that transferring that life experience into your sales walk is extremely important. Looking at your mistakes on that side of things really elevates the way that you treat people, you act in certain situations, and that ultimately that people perceive you as.
So you wouldn't say that like making a big mistake necessarily, influences the mindset of a rebel that you have in your company?
Definitely not. Like if somebody screws up or does something that somebody else doesn't like, it's like, hey, you learned, and it's okay. It's not really that big of a deal, right? A big mistake would be lying to people, cheating people out of their own money in a proposal that you give them that's inflated, right, for your commission check. Those would be mistakes. Those are things that, thank God, I never had to deal with, because I had a father that directed me through honesty and integrity and would never let me do something like that in the first place, and right that ship before it ever wronged to begin with.
So let's learn and then move on. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Dale. That was so cool. And thank you for giving us a totally other view on sales there. Let's be rebellious moving forward. Well, thank you so much, and have a great day now in the Midwest. And
thank you very much.
Catch you on the flip side. All righty. And our last speaker, short introduction. We are so happy to have Morgan J. Ingram with us. He's the 3 times LinkedIn top sales voice and content creator, and he has been named B2B Influencer Marketing Jedi, as well as top sales voice by LinkedIn in several years. And he will be sharing his insights on how B2B sales team can increase revenue through influencer marketing, an area that he have been really successful and leverage to a large extent. So interesting to have you with us, Morgan. Let's see if we can see you. Hello, Morgan. Can't see or hear you, Morgan. Let's see if we can fix that. Oh, there we are.
Yeah, we fixed it. We're good. We're good. We're here.
Well, great to meet you. And
Nice to meet you as well.
Yes, and so stoked to hear about your content here today about influencer marketing and sales. Are you calling in from Atlanta today, or are you out traveling?
No, I'm in Atlanta. I'm currently home, so yeah, I'm
awesome,
holding it down.
Well, take it away, and we'll catch you then for the Q&A session. So great.
Awesome, thank you. All right, hopefully everyone's having a fantastic Thursday. But before we go into this, I wanna talk to you all in the audience, because I just want to get a gauge of where everyone's at as I come in here. So I have 2 questions for you all. My first question is, who is in the room, right? What are the roles? I know we have sales leaders here, but we got VPs of sales, we have CROs. Tell me who's in the room, where you're from. I always like to just see where the gauge of people are at as I engage with the audience, as I go into my points here. And then my second question is, as we get into the chat, when you all think of an influencer, what do you think of? Right? What do you think of? Right? What is the first word that comes to mind? So that's what I want to go ahead and set that out there. See where everyone's thoughts are as we get into this presentation today. Like I said in the quick introduction, I've done different aspects of influencer marketing. I've also done sales training and sales coaching for organizations on top of the funnel. So I'm excited to be here and dive into what we're going to talk about. So essentially, what are we talking about? What are we going into today? These are things that you're going to learn. Before I go into what is going to happen and the topics, I'm going to tell you all what you're going to learn today. So why B2B influencer marketing is the future. And I'm going to dive into a couple things and stats that I've seen across the board. How to develop a content strategy for your reps. We have a couple SDRs in here. If you're a BDR manager, we're going to dive into that. Know how to post consistently. Like, how does that work to have this influencer marketing piece? How to manage your time to post and creating opportunities through posting, right? So how do you actually gain revenue through the things that we're talking about? So this is what I want to touch on. Y'all probably seen this movie or seen Iron Man, or at least know who this is. And I've just seen the rise of the new sales rep. So I've been an SDR. I've been an SDR manager. I've done sales training full time. I've done sales coaching. I've been a sales leader. So I've seen all different aspects. And as each year goes on, we know that the sales profession is changing. The question, though, is how is it changing? So the channels of outbound that we typically have done, cold calling, emailing, video, Dale just mentioned the voice note, there's a ton of amazing things that you can do. However, we are now going into a world where influence is, I believe, going to be the new outbound. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that you need to get a mic, lights, camera. You don't need to do all that. What I am saying, though, is understanding your market, becoming a subject matter expert, and sharing your expertise is going to be absolutely critical as we move into this new world. And as you think about this new world, we have to figure out ways that we can rise up as sales professionals, sales leaders, or whatever that may be, to touch and get in front of our audience in a different way. And I believe that different way is creating content using B2B influencer marketing, because ultimately, if you look at where the world is going, personal brands have started to become even more prominent than company brands. You'll see that personal brands have more followers, engagement than the company brands themselves. And as time has evolved, more people are trusting these personal brands than they are these company brands. And there's multiple examples of that. I always use my prime example, which is like The Rock. So The Rock is a good example of someone who has a personal brand, has influence, and is able to bring a lot of people towards something. That's just what he does, versus a company brand might be a little bit different than that personal brand. So what I'm talking about this is when you're looking at how do you get net new opportunities, how do you get business coming, how do you make sure that things are going right? It's understanding what is going on, right? How do you actually go about it, and making sure that you're reaching out to the right people as a whole. So that's where I believe the rise of the new sales rep is going, where salespeople, yes, will still be doing their cold outbound things that they do, which is like calling and social selling, etc. But I also believe that it will be a extension where they will become, let's say, mini marketers to a degree, to put their message out there in a different way, especially as we see the SDR role evolve. I believe that there will be more mini marketers that will come out of that SDR role to get in front of the people that they're looking to get in front of, so that ultimately they can convert the opportunities they're looking to convert. So that's where I believe things are going. Now I'm going to throw up this poll, right? Because I mentioned it and I want to see where people are at. So I just threw up a poll here. And just really asking, like, have you done any B2B influencer marketing to acquire net new opportunities? Want to see where people are at. We'll leave it up here for a bit. And, I've been working with different clients on different ways of going about this. This is an avenue, right? Just like every single channel that you think about is an avenue to acquire net new business. Now, obviously, we know the traditional ones, which is the calling, the emailing, the social selling, and things of that nature. However, this here is just another way that you can think about it. And I'm going to share tactically what you can do, but I want to really just set the stage on where things are going, what I've seen being in these different roles on how to go about it. And ultimately, when you think of influence, you have to think about, okay, who in our market or who in our segmentation can we have people internally that become these subject matter experts? Right now, you have to look at where the attention is, and a lot of the attention is going towards these social channels. Now, it's really defining, though, as you think of the rise of new sales rep and where we're going, where are those channels and where people live? Majority of people that are in here, your buyers, most likely live on LinkedIn, but they might be on Twitter. I don't know. You might be on Pinterest. I don't know. But the thing is, you have to think about, where's my buyer live? How can I show up there, not only prospect there and reach out, but create content there that they can consume, that I can educate them from the marketing perspective, so it's easier from a seller's perspective to acquire net new opportunities. And there's different ways of doing that: posting content, webinars, different events. But I'm just giving you all things to think about as we're going into this new world, and why I believe this rise of the new sales rep here. And so what I'm going to do here is, we just saw this poll that just went up, and essentially, we have a couple of bit of the answers here, and I'll close this poll, real quick, so people can see the responses. But you'll see right here that we had around, majority of people said no. So I didn't expect it to be an overwhelming result. But the thing is that once you're able to identify, okay, influencer marketing is something that's on the radar, Morgan's telling me it's something to pay attention to. Why is that important? Where is this coming from? So I went out and found some data. All right. And if anyone has questions on this data, you can obviously ask questions in the chat. We want to keep this interactive as possible. So 63% report. So it's just like overall 60% of people report executive influence drives sales conversions. So that's really interesting. Now, the whole leverage point is identifying the right influencers. So again, when you think of influencers, you might think of like vlogging or videos, and it doesn't always have to be that. In the B2B context, you're typically looking for people who have expertise, they understand the subject matter, they have the right audience. So what we're looking to do is tap into those influencers who have the right audience and know what they're talking about. So by tapping into that audience, then we can obviously get those conversions. So if you're going after IT, you might want to find someone who has relative experience in IT, right? You also, in return, can have your sellers posting subject matter expertise. I was just talking to a rep the other day. He was using a framework that we're about to actually talk about here in a minute. And his whole strategy was talking about certain topics and speaking to that audience. And he didn't have a lot of likes and comments. And that's a big thing about this. He doesn't have like tens of thousands of likes. He only has like, maybe like 5 or 10 likes, a couple of comments. But because he's talking about a certain topic, himself as a sales rep has become a subject matter expert because he's continuously studying, putting his content out there, and it's actually led to a high influx of inbound. And there's a good amount of people who are doing that. Typically, you think about this as you're selling to salespeople or marketing, but I've seen it in cybersecurity. I've seen it in HR. It's just a longer term lift, right? This is not going to be like, hey, go post tomorrow and it's all good. This is really just focused on, hey, like, let's put some content out there. We don't know who's watching, but here's the thing that's important. And y'all can write this stat down. You probably have seen this before. Whether you decide to have internal people be your influencers or you go get external people that are influencers, this stat I always remind people of on how we may think there's a lot of noise going on, and there isn't a lot of people posting. So LinkedIn came up with data a couple of months ago, and they said, hey, only 1% to 2% of people post consistently. And posting consistently means like posting once a week, right? Or even posting once a month, right? So what they're saying is that like there's a small amount of people posting based on the percentage of people that are on the platform. So if you're able to identify the right key influencer, you're able to build your own influencer and internally if you want to. And I'm going to share how both of those work. You are able to drive these sales conversions, which I found to be pretty interesting. Another stat here, 72% of B2B professionals have improved brand reputation working with influencers. So brand is critical, right? Brand is what leads to those sales. You think of Nike, versus maybe like a K-Swiss, the price on those shoes and the brand equity of those are two different things. And they even may be made by the same material, but the brand increases that price point or the conversion that people have. So I bring that to a point because it's something that you all can think about as an SDR, as a BDR, a sales manager, even as a founder. It's thinking about how can we raise that brand equity for ourselves that it then allows into those conversions, which again, I'm just reading these stats off. And then another one is like, the activity is going to increase. So again, it's about either identifying or building your own. That's what you have to be thinking about, because you're going to have a competitive edge in the market if you have value-led content as an influencer. Now, it's not like a B2C influencer where it's like, hey, here's this product, buy it. It's a longer term cycle. According to the data, it's going to take you 4 to 6 months, right? Typically to really get into the audience, or even sales cycles can take that long depending on your product. So it's not like B2C where it's like, here's this sock, go buy it. It's buying decision committee. However, if you're able to get in front of the audience with content and warm them up while also doing your normal cold calling, emailing, social selling, etc., that combination will lead to higher conversions as a whole. So that's what I'm talking about here. It's not just either or, right? It's really focusing on how can we make this impactful across the board. And the last that you see, like this is going to lead to a lot of generation of revenue in the moving forward. That's what it says at the end of 2022. I assume that to be higher at the end of 2023 next year. So you see where this is all going. Now, the question may be, okay, Morgan, I get it, right? Sounds cool, but how do I do that? How do I go find these influencers, and how do I go build my own if I don't want to find them? Because those are two different routes and there's pros or cons to each. But let's talk about, once we talk about B2B influencer marketing, what is it, right? Because I mentioned a little bit about like what exactly is it. So B2B influencer marketing in my eyes is an extension of the outbound that you have that turns into your inbound. When you're creating content, you're putting it out there. You don't know who's going to see it. You don't know who's going to engage. You have a good pulse if you've done your research, but you don't know. So you're putting it out there. The goal, though, is that people to like it and comment, which obviously leads engagement, which then leads into people coming in inbound to learn more about what you have to do or what you're about so you can sell them, right? That's the whole gist of how this works. So that is what the B2B influencer marketing is. Now that we know what it is, let's talk about how to go about it. So I'm going to pull up this poll real quick. So when I say reps, I'm talking about like sales reps. I'll throw up another poll. Do you think reps creating content is helpful? Right? And most people say no, like, no, this is a waste of time. Now, I don't think every single rep on the planet should be creating content, right? I don't think that. So don't be like, hey, Morgan, like my team needs to sell. Like, why are you telling them to create content? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying here that you want to think about your team as a curator, or even the people that you're talking to, you want to think them as curators instead of creators. And this is really, really important distinction that most people falter on, that then ultimately leads to them being overwhelmed to even create this content in the first place. So, and I really want y'all to write this down and keep this in mind. What is a curator? A curator is someone who finds content and gives their contextual feedback. So a creator is like someone like me. Like I might be like, hey, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to make a video, and I'm going to send something out. That's like a creator mode. However, what I'm talking about is curator mode, which is, hey, go read your blog post, go listen to a podcast, go watch this YouTube video. Every single person in here, if I was like, hey, you would probably agree with this, is that you need to continuously think about how can you learn more about your buyer? How can you learn more about your buyer? Everyone should be doing that, right? So if you're looking to learn more about your buyer, why not add an extra step to this? You already should be reading blog posts. You should already be reading articles. You should already be looking at like different pieces in your industry. You should be looking at the people who are the thought leaders. You should be absorbing their information and their content. From absorbing their information and content, you then want to add your context. Hey, I read this blog post today. Here are 3 things that I learned. And post that. Tag the author, right? Tag the company. When you tag the author and tag the company, if they like it, it goes into their network, right? If the company likes it, it goes into their network, right? And other companies like it, we'll see it. These are things that are very small steps, but people don't do often. So now let's go into this as we go into the Q&A. I'm just going to talk about how sales teams can leverage B2B influencer strategies without being an influencer, right? Hopefully this is helpful to y'all and you're like, oh, this is a little bit easier, right? Hopefully I've quelled some anxiety today from people who are like, I got to go get a camera, a mic, no, you don't have to do that. So there's 4 key steps. You'll see on my profile right here, LinkedIn profile optimization for your sales reps. This is something that I want everyone to go look at the end of today. And once I say this, you're going to be like, that makes a lot of sense. And leaders that are here in the room, you'll probably agree with me, but agree with me as well. So when you think of like profile optimization, your headline needs to be on point. Your headline's got to be on point, right? You don't want to just have like BDR AE that doesn't say anything. Speak to your audience. What are you doing? Now, my things right now, I'm in transition as I'm building my new thing. So you'll see right here, I'm doing something around B2B influencer marketing and communities. I haven't announced that yet, but people know I have a headline. I'm not just like putting something random. So as you are in the audience, you have to think about as a BDR or an AE or whatever you are, how are you helping your audience? Saying you're a BDR and AE doesn't do anything for you. Like, there's a lot of BDRs. There's a lot of AEs. So change that, right? Make it applicable. Content deployment. One thing I always tell people to do is what I just said. So I'm not going to talk about it a little bit too much. You're starting out. You don't need to go do TikToks. You don't need to dance, right? You don't need to do all this stuff. Keep it very simple in the beginning. I encourage you for the new year, or you can start now. 1 post a week. It's not that hard. 1 post a week. Go find a blog post. Go find an article, go listen to a podcast in your industry, get 3 takeaways and post about it. Hey, these are the 3 things I learned. You should be learning anyway, so this makes your life a lot easier as you do this. Engage with your network. How do you do that? So one of the ways that you can engage with your network is commenting on decision makers' posts. Now, pause. I know a lot of people don't post, but bear with me. If they do post, your comment will stand out above everyone else because most people don't take the time to comment on decision makers' posts. They only don't have that much engagement. So liking, commenting, engaging with them is going to be massive. It's going to be big for you. And also, as well, as you're continuously doing this, one of the things that you want to make sure that you're doing is looking at what performs well and then continuously doing that. Iterate, A/B test. Like I said, we don't want to continuously do things that don't work. Find out what works, find the systems, and then you can go from there. And that will avoid the mistakes that you're making. And again, the last thing I'll say as we go into questions that are already coming in, which I love, always engage with your network. I'll give this one additional tip that's really big. So if you are going to talk to your creators, if you are a creator yourself, right, or a curator, best way to put it here, engage with the likes. Say, hey, what did you like about this post? What are some things that you are going to engage with? How do you want to speak to me in this way, right? These are different things that you can do to make sure that you can engage appropriately, right? So I want y'all to think about that as we wrap into the questions. I believe my time is at a hold here, but I want y'all to think about when you're doing your B2B influencer campaigns, whatever that be. I believe this is the future of where we're going to be going on top of the outbound touches that we're already going to do. And I've been in outbound for quite some time and training this and coaching this and done it myself. LinkedIn profile optimization for everyone here. Please do not just have BDR AE. You're losing opportunities by doing that. Content deployment, find 1 article a week. one blog post a week. Read it, give your takeaways, engage with your network, comment with people, and then make sure you're A/B testing the posts that work and don't work so you can figure out what the best strategy is for you. So I see we have questions here. I don't know if someone's gonna come back up to go through these, but I can. Okay, cool. Emma's here. We're good. We're
Hi.
good.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Truly interesting to hear all your insights on B2B marketing and sales and how you can become an influencer. And we have several questions from the audience. One is from Lucas. Have you noticed some common mistakes that people often do within the space of B2B influencer marketing? Do you see like often reoccurring mistakes that people do, or?
Yeah, Lucas, this is a great question, and I have a couple of things, but I will say like a lot of this is new, so a lot of people will make mistakes as people try to figure it out, right? Because it is a new area for people. It's not as like B2C, which has been done for a while. So I'll say number one is the brand takes over the. Let's just say they get an external creator, they take over their creative process. So the brand's like, this is exactly what we want you to do, which defeats the purpose of why you're getting that person in the first place. If they're not able to create their own and they're not able to be their own voice, the audience will know that this is, they just, there's a paid influencer ad, etc. Which, I've run into those scenarios as well as I have been, figuring out the best way to go about it because it is a new area. So mistakes will come along the way, but that's probably the big common one. And then two is how they want, or like the influencer and the brand, how they deliver what they're trying to deliver is not aligned with how an audience receive information. So it's just like, hey, we have this webinar coming out, sign up. It's like, there's no value, right? There's no like why you should be there. There's no alignment, right? And that leads to people like being disengaged. And I think another piece of this as well is not understanding the channel or the delivery that an influencer has. So some people may be video focused, but then you're like, hey, we want them to go, write this long blog piece. That might not be for that influencer. So you want to find the best ways to align with them on things that they're strong in as well. So those are a couple mistakes that I've seen, Lucas, but continuously learning along the way myself as well.
Great comments. Another one we have from Anna. What are your top tips for sales and marketing alignment to work as seamlessly and efficiently as possible?
Oh, Anna, you have like 30
question.
minutes to an hour. Like,
where to start?
That could go in so many different directions, depending on what you're trying to do. So here's one that like, and this is not me being like smarty person here. This is just like what does not happen is having a congruent meeting with marketing and sales. You get aligned by communicating. And what I find is that most organizations, they just don't communicate. They live in silos and then nothing happens. So I know that probably is like duh answer. However, that is actually what does not happen. I talk to people and they're like, are you meeting? No. Okay. Well, that's like step number one, right? If you want to align, you should probably communicate. So you should probably have some type of weekly meeting to figure that out. But I'll go into another lane. So the other thing is having an alignment on goals. So the reason that there's not alignment with marketing and sales is because marketing has different goals than sales. So if I have a different goal than you, then we're going to be fighting and we're going to have disputes. So you need to make sure that those goals are aligned. That's why that happens pretty often. That's another piece as well. And then another thing that I'll add here is when you're thinking about the marketing and sales alignment, it's especially on webinars and things of that nature and events, marketing, getting the details of what the event is about, what is the webinar about, and feeding that to the sales team that allows for them to follow up through a sales lens instead of a marketing lens. There's a lot of dispute there because there's a difference between marketing messaging and sales messaging. And that's where a massive disconnect happens. And that's why we don't see sometimes the conversions that we'd like to see. So Anna, that's to answer your question without going into another webinar.
No, that was a great answer for sure. I hope that answered Anna's question. Another one is from Gabriella, and she writes, thank you, very interesting. What are some upcoming trends you see within the field of influencer marketing in a B2B sales context?
Yeah, so I think a trend that you'll start to see is organizations combining influencers. And what I mean by that is getting like external subject matter experts within that field and getting like a good amount of them to post on different mediums. So I'll give you an example. A company could be like, okay, we're going to get an influencer to do a do like our webinar series. We're going to get another one to do like our blogs. We'll get another person just like post on behalf, and you'll start seeing that more, where you'll have subject matter experts who will be more extensive and they'll cover a lot of components for the brand. And then you'll actually start seeing more brand ambassadors, very similar to how it comes to mind because I did this. Like Gillette has like brand ambassadors in college. So they'll do activations on college campuses by getting college kids to lead those activations. So you'll start to see as more influencers are in the space and more people start to create content and things of that nature and gain followings, you'll start seeing ambassadors for brands and speaking to the product. Now, the difference for that is that like, you have to understand the product and you have to know those things. So you won't see as many. Like Gillette's got like thousands. I don't think you'll see like 1,000 people for a B2B brand, but you will start seeing those things. And another trend that you also will start to see as well is people doing like togethered like in-person events. So like you'll have a brand, another brand, they're partners. They'll have an event together and they'll have influencers maybe come on site or do content through that way so they can get a good amount of content. If you do content in person, because I've done it before, you can get 4 to 6 months of content for 3 days. So that's really big for a brand, right? Because the production of content costs a lot. I mean, if you're a marketing room, you know how much it costs to create content. So if you can do it in 3 days, you have influencers who are in your field, that will be a trend you'll start to see more of as well.
And what do you think will be more common going forward? Do you think more internal influencers or external? What do you?
Yeah, so that's a good question because it goes with Gabrielle, your question as well in the sales context. I believe that you'll start to see more internal influencers, but I wouldn't call them influencers in the way that y'all are thinking about it. I like to just call them like subject matter experts. So there are people in organizations, because I'm working with a couple of people right now that are really knowledgeable. They understand their market. They know what they're talking about, but they don't know how to create content or they're just overwhelmed, right? They're like, where do I start? Like, do I do a video? Do I dance? Right? Do I like people just don't know, right? So once they figure it out though, they're able to give out their knowledge faster. Then I would say someone in B2C, where B2C is more entertaining, like B2B is more education, but still somewhat entertaining, which can be a little bit harder. So I would say from the sales context lens, you'll probably see more people internally start doing it. I look at from the sales rep's lens because a sales rep is in the field speaking to customers daily, like customer success, but they're selling it. So they're getting a lot of the insight anyways, but you'll start seeing founders, executives as well, and they'll be designated executives, which I will believe that will be the voice of the company, and they will start being the subject matter experts or the influencers per se. And then you'll still see external ones, but brands want to be able to have someone in-house that can speak to the true voice of the brand. Like I can go work with a brand, but like I'm not in the company. So I can be on path, I can post the content, it's going to work. But if you have someone internal, it's a different element to that because now you can attach a face and a voice to the brand as well.
Yeah, I guess there's pros and cons to both internal and external, of course. But let's say someone in the audience has gotten inspired now and wants to become an influencer tomorrow or so. You gave some great tips on like, you can go step by step, like starting with 1 post a week or something like that and have that as a goal. How much time do you think one can predict for it to like start creating content, publishing it, and becoming like an influencer? Do you think that's predictable, or maybe that's hard to pinpoint the timeline, or what do you say?
Yeah, well, I'm curious. Is anyone here like fired up? Are they about to go create some content? Like, let us know in the chat. I'm just curious, but I'll give the answer. So essentially, the first part of this will not take as long because all you have to do is go read a blog post or a podcast, etc. So this might take you at max 30 minutes, depending on how fast you listen to podcasts and how fast you read, but probably 30 to 45 minutes. You could actually create a good amount of piece of content from there. But I would just start focusing off really small, grabbing a blog post, grabbing an article, grabbing a video, grabbing a podcast, writing down those 3 takeaways. And by the way, you could get 3 takeaways and not listen to the whole thing and really just talk to your experience about what you learned. You learned something new, which is great. And then every week just tagging someone and giving your expertise and your context, that's going to be absolutely important throughout the way.
I'm getting inspired now, I must say.
Me too. Yeah.
So Morgan, thank you so much for all these great answers. Just want to ask if you want to leave the audience with some last words or one last tip or something to round off before we say goodbye.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I will tell you all is, it has to do with my session, but actually has to do with all the sessions. And I say this every time that I hop on and do one of these things. You probably took a good amount of notes. There's some great speakers. I saw Dale earlier, and he's a good friend of mine. I'd say, like, whatever you wrote down, pick one thing and actually do it. Because ultimately that means that you just wasted your time. Like, I'm just gonna be real with you. Because if you learned and then did nothing, you just wasted all this time. So I would just encourage you all to just pick one thing, circle it, star it. I don't care what you do. Pick that thing and actually do it for the next 30 days. And you'll be like, wow, okay, I learned something from this event. I got a lot of insights that were interesting. And then I took action, and you'll feel 1,000 times better about the time you spent here today with everybody.
Awesome. Last words. Super.
Awesome, everybody.
All right.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic, Morgan. Really, really interesting. And you were very generous with insights and, recommendations here. So awesome. And thank you so much. And we wish you all the best now and in your future endeavors with all your stuff going on and so forth.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me, and y'all have a blessed rest of your day.
You too.
Okay. You too.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay. That was our last speaker. And thank you so much for listening in. Before we split, we just want to remind you again about our special offer. We have this B2B tech sales deep dive that you can sign up for and claim your spot. So please do that if you want to discuss those kind of topics with one of our sales experts, especially around growth teams, inside sales, and the funnel and so forth. And of course, you're free to contact our speakers here today as well. You can easily find them on LinkedIn, all of them. And Emma, we have also other content.
We do. Yeah, we want to highlight that as well, that we have loads of more content that you can access via our website. We have loads of blog posts and on-demand webinars and events and other events coming up next year. And we also have a podcast with over 100 episodes. So there's a lot of content that you can indulge in. So make sure to check it out. I'll send a little link to it so you can access it easily there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining B2B Tech Sales Summit today. We are so thankful for you hanging out here, and we're so happy to have had you. And also thank you a lot to our speakers who have called in from Australia, Germany, the States, and England, and other places, and Sweden, of course. And it's been a really insightful and hopefully beneficial afternoon for you. So let's do the thing that Morgan just said. Let's pick one thing that we actually take action on the coming 30 days and make sure we implement that into our ordinary lives and our quite busy schedules that we all have. With that, thank you so much, and hope to see you soon again in our upcoming events in next quarter. So with that, have a great December and holidays when it comes to it.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a good one.
Have a great day.